Chapter 67. Author's Note. These days, our votes are not as good as before. Qin Wushuang thought that this was a big deal. Haha, brothers, let your votes come more fiercely. In the entire River County, the Qin's martial arts practice field was second to none. It was because the Qin manor was big enough. Since the Qin family had started out with martial arts, they had spent a lot of money on the construction of the martial arts practice field. Each of you, get your spirits up. Although Qin Lianchuan's arm had not fully recovered, he was full of energy. It was because he felt that the entire Qin manor was filled with a wave of vigorous vitality. It was a sign of soaring. After lunch, the young master will come for an inspection. If you don't want to leave a bad impression on the young master, then get your spirits up. While Qin Lianchuan spoke, he commanded the team and shouted, "Okay, count off. 1, 2, 3, 60, 99. The last person to count off was 99. A trace of pain flashed across Qin Lianchuan's face. During the Su family's invasion, his team had lost 21 people. Besides the 6 who were recovering from their injuries, 15 of his brothers who were as close as brothers had lost their lives in that battle. After the team had gathered, Qin Wushuang's hearty laughter came from outside the field. "Uncle Lianchuan, you are quite efficient." Currently, Qin Wushuang's position in the family had surpassed his father. Vividly, he was showing signs of surpassing his father, Qin Lianshan. When each of the guards saw their young master had arrived, they all got their spirits up. They puffed out their chests and sucked in their stomach. Qin Wushuang walked to the front of the team with a majestic gait. His sharp eyes swept across the face of each person in the team. As if a steel knife had scraped past, this group of guards all felt a wave of coldness. Inwardly, they were all shocked. Young master's eyes are so sharp. Stepping forward, Qin Wushuang said in a clear voice, "You are all heroes of the Qin manor. I have a question for you. As guards, what is your duty?" Was there a need to ask? Qin Lianchuan had brainwashed them every day. These things had already been implanted into their souls. They replied in unison, "Protect our homeland until death do us part." Qin Lianchuan nodded in satisfaction. These guys didn't embarrass him. His voice was full of energy, and as the captain, he was very satisfied with his mental state. Unexpectedly, Qin Wushuang shook his head resolutely. Wrong. Everyone, including Qin Lianchuan, was stunned when they saw the shocked expressions on everyone's faces. "You're only right about one thing. It was right to protect the homeland. However, a bodyguard must first have the ability to protect himself. If you can't even protect yourself, how can you protect your home?" As soon as Qin Wushuang said these words, the entire place fell into silence. Thinking back to the invasion of the Su family, it was indeed as the young master had said. Facing so many real martial realm warriors, it was very difficult for them to even protect themselves. Protecting their home was more like an empty shout. In front of a strong enemy, it was pale and powerless. "We're all old brothers of the Qin manor. I've never doubted your loyalty, and I've never doubted your spirit of facing death with equanimity. However," Qin Wushuang paused when he said this. He glanced around again and found that everyone's eyes were focused on him. Everyone's ears were perked up to listen to his speech. He was very satisfied. Only then did he continue, however, to defeat the enemy and achieve victory. It's not enough to rely on courage, and loyalty alone. On the battlefield, the most direct and effective thing is still strength and tactic. The combination of strength and tactics is the only way to victory. Today I want to see your strength. See our strength? When these hot-blooded men heard that the young master wanted to test their strength, they all rubbed their fists and palms. Their blood was boiling, and their eyes were full of anticipation. "Qin Yong, step out of the group." Qin Wushuang lightly shouted. A fierce and brave young man was called out. For a moment, he didn't react. He looked at the young master in a daze and found that the young master's eyes were indeed staring at him. Only then did he realize that the young master was indeed calling him. He hurriedly ran out of the group. "Young master, Qin Yong greets you." Qin Wushuang waved his hand. In the martial arts practice field, there is no need to pay attention to those fake formalities. You all should give your best performance. That is the greatest respect you can give to this young master. Yes. Qin Yong was a crazy person. At first, he was nervous, but when he heard the young master's words, he also became spirited. "Give me the bow and arrow on your back." Qin Yong didn't hesitate and handed it over. Qin Wushuang took the bow in his hand and lightly pulled it. It became a full moon shape. According to his estimation, this bow had a strength of about 120 jin. For the ordinary guards, this bow was their limit. However, this bow was still far from Qin Wushuang's requirement. Qi surged and a kala sound was heard. The bow in his hand suddenly changed shape and became a non-bow. This bow doesn't have enough strength. From now on, the warriors of our Qin manor will not use this kind of useless bow. Listen well, from today on, the bows on your back are all useless. Replace them. Replace them? Looking at everyone's suspicious eyes, Qin Wushuang shouted, "Replace them." According to his estimation, with this kind of bow, if 30 people shot together, they could at most injure a stage 1 or 2 genuine force realm warrior. Once they surpassed stage 3 genuine force realm, they could almost ignore this kind of bow. To deal with a stage 5 or 6 genuine force realm warrior, the strength of the bow had to be at least doubled. And to deal with someone of a higher level, a strong bow with a strength of at least 360 jin was needed. And a strong bow with a strength of 360 jin was something that no one in the Qin Manor's guards could do, including Qin Lianchuan, who was at the peak of the power force. The Qin Manor's guards were very disciplined. Although they were full of doubts, they didn't whisper to each other. They all looked seriously at Qin Wushuang and waited for him to continue. "From tomorrow onwards, I will give you 3 months of special training. From this afternoon to tomorrow, you will have time to prepare. When the time comes, all of you will gather here." Qin Wushuang glanced at everyone's faces and saw their determined expressions. He nodded and emphasized, "This special training will be very difficult, no less than purgatory. If there are any of you who want to back out, please stand out." "No." They all shouted in unison. "Are there any cowards?" "No." "Good. I can see from your eyes that no one wants to back out. I hope that after these 3 months of performance you will not back out." "We will not back out, we will definitely not back out." At least until now, Qin Wushuang was satisfied. These guards' individual cultivation was indeed not high, but it wasn't their fault. This was the limit of the Qin Manor's overall strength. But at least, under Qin Lianchuan's training, this group of people could at least be called warriors. In terms of bravery, courage, confidence, loyalty, and discipline, they all performed very well. With these basic skills, plus Qin Wushuang's tailor-made special training plan for them, he believed that after 3 months, this team of guards would be completely different. Of course, these 3 months were only the initial stage of training and observation. To truly turn this group of 100 people into an iron army and an impregnable castle, it would not be done in 1 day and 1 night. These 3 months were mainly for observation. He would observe each guard's physique, characteristics, and specialties. Then, he would combine their characteristics and supplement them with skills that were suitable for them. This way, he would be able to stimulate the strongest potential of each individual. In other words, these 3 months of homework were mainly for basic training. Physical strength, and the transformation of the body's functions. Qin Wushuang had also combined all of these with the content of the martial arts student exam. In these guards, the oldest ones were close to 30 years old, and the youngest ones were only 17 or 18 years old. Their plasticity was still very strong. Remember, your performance in these 3 months will directly determine your fate in the future. Those who perform at the bottom will be eliminated and sent to farm in the fields, and those who perform exceptionally well will be promoted to team leader. Their treatment and rank will also increase accordingly. In any society, if one wanted to progress, there must be competition, and the best way to stimulate competition was a reasonable reward and punishment system. An effective incentive system would always allow a team to be full of competitiveness. Only by being full of competitiveness could a team maintain its vitality and combat power. Qin Lianchuan quietly watched each of Qin Wushuang's movements. It was as if he was watching a general who had achieved hundreds of military achievements. He appeared to be at ease. That aura easily took control of the situation. Such a young master, compared to the young master who was constantly bullied at the martial arts academy, was like heaven and earth. It was hard not to be impressed. Chapter 68. Author's Note. Brothers, our recommendation ticket is Wang Xiao. He is getting worse every year. Work harder, ha. When Qin Wushuang commanded his subordinates, he paid particular attention to the combination of kindness and power. Just by showing off his power, acting like a master, and talking about beating and killing, it was impossible to make his subordinates follow him wholeheartedly. The reason why these guards of the Qin manor were so loyal was because of the kindness that their father, Qin Lianshan, had passed down. The combination of Qin Lianshan's kindness and Qin Lianchuan's strictness had created this team of unparalleled loyalty. Now they had the foundation. It all depended on how Qin Wushuang was going to transform them. The basic homework was very monotonous. It was just running laps and strength training. For running laps, Eastwood Town had its back to the Great Song Mountains. It had a unique geographical advantage. When Qin Wushuang had returned from the martial arts academy, he had used the Great Song Mountains to train himself. Now, of course, training this group of guards was inseparable from the Great Song Mountains. Qin Wushuang's starting point was to build a valiant iron army. An invincible army didn't only require iron-like discipline, but also iron-like combat power. How to get the fighting power? Training. Harsh training. When it was almost 3 a.m, Qin Wushuang stood on the martial arts practice field with a cold expression. The team was already in order, including Qin Lianchuan. As the captain of the guards, although his injuries had not healed, he insisted on not being absent. He wanted to set an example. Very good, 99 people. I hope that after today's training, there will still be 99 people here at 3 a.m. Our slogan is, no one is to be left behind. Who is left behind? What is that? It's cowards. It was an orderly roar with a neat rhythm. Okay, now, follow me. The first task is to climb the Great Song Mountains. As soon as he finished speaking, Qin Wushuang gave the order and took the lead to head towards the direction of the Great Song Mountain. Training this group of guards was very different from when he had helped Hu Zian and Fang Xiaozhong. The training plan he had given to Hu Zian and Fang Xiaozhong was only to let them pass the martial arts student exam. However, training this group of guards was to train them into a group of iron-blooded warriors. Since the starting point was different, the content and intensity of the training were also different. The first task was to climb the Great Song Mountains. This group of bodyguards had only been given a third of the time that Hu Zian and the others had. This meant that not only did they have to keep running at all times, they might even exceed the time limit if they slowed down a little. What did exceeding the time limit mean? It meant that they were left behind. What did it mean to fall behind? Coward. These hot-blooded men could lose their heads and spill their blood. However, no one was willing to wear the stinky hat of a coward. His breathing was very rapid, and his chest felt like it was being pressed down by a heavy burden. This kind of high-intensity running was the most exhausting. After running for 100 miles, his chest felt even heavier, as if there was a knife constantly piercing his heart. It was indescribably uncomfortable. 120 kilometers. Not only was his chest heavy, but his legs, waist, and abdomen also felt as if they were filled with lead. However, there was no sign of retreat on their faces. Pain, distortion, and struggle. The only thing he didn't give up was that he didn't. Qin Wushuang observed everything as he ran. After traveling 160 kilometers, they finally arrived, and it was almost pressed against the line. In other words, the time was just right. There was no extra time, but they were not late either. Not bad, at least you have a good start. Qin Wushuang gave appropriate encouragement. But it's just not bad. Because this is the first day, the time I gave you is a little more lenient. Tomorrow, the time will be shortened by 10%. Are you guys confident? Yes. A thunderous response rang out. Very good. Now I'll give you 15 minutes to relax your muscles, recover your physical strength, and adjust your breathing. After 15 minutes, we will set off for the return journey. When the order was given, no one dared to question it. They were all racing against time, making full use of this rare rest time. The return journey was mostly downhill, so it was relatively easier. However, the previous exhaustion could not be completely replenished with 15 minutes of rest. Therefore, the return journey was the same as before. After returning to the Qin Manor, they had breakfast and adjusted themselves slightly. Next up was strength training. Strength and physical strength were the two basic indicators of physical training. Physical strength training included endurance, extreme endurance, and other aspects. The connotation of strength training was even richer. It included the strength of both arms, waist, back, legs, and so on. Qin Wushuang's training method not only borrowed from the scientific training methods from his previous life, but also the nutritional knowledge from his previous life. He did not miss out on any details. Weightlifting and bench press not only train the strength of the arms, but also the strength of the waist and abdomen. In detail, it is the training of the bones and muscle fibers. High-load weightlifting helps the muscle fibers to thicken. It not only improves strength, but also endurance, speed, and so on. Therefore, each of your training groups is three-dimensional and multifaceted. Qin Wushuang patiently guided them. As for what muscle fibers were, he did not expect these people to understand. He only needed them to understand. Multiple sets, high density, these are the basic secrets of muscle training. Don't underestimate this monotonous, repetitive training. This is the most primitive way to improve your physical strength. The contraction of the muscles is controlled by the brain. Therefore, the most important thing is that during the muscle training process, you must maintain a high level of concentration. Combine your willpower with the contraction of your muscles. Achieve the unity of your willpower and willpower. Only in this way can you combine your willpower with your body in the tiniest way. Your brain can control your body in the most perfect way. To put it bluntly, doing this will allow you to react faster than your enemies on the battlefield. Once the thought comes to your mind, your body will naturally obey. Sometimes, between life and death, it's the slightest of reactions. The devil training's effect was amazing. After a week, immediate results were seen. Qin Wushuang asked them to draw their original bows again. One by one, they shouted, "Lighter, lighter!" It's amazing. 1 week, it's only been 1 week. Why is the bow so weak? Yeah, I used to think that if you can draw a bow with a force of 120 kilograms, you'd be considered a hero in Eastwood Town. Now, it seems like it's nothing. This group of hot-blooded men were overjoyed. They were all discussing spiritedly. They looked at Qin Wushuang with even more admiration. Everyone, this is just the beginning. If you're complacent now, you've suffered a week in vain. Qin Wushuang poured cold water on them. We're not complacent, we're not complacent. The guards were all happy and expressed their opinions. At this moment, Qin Xiu waved at Qin Wushuang from outside the training field. You guys continue to train. You have to complete 12 sets of strength training by noon. Qin Wushuang left the task and walked straight to Qin Xiu. He came up to her and asked in a low voice, "Sis, what's the matter?" Qin Xiu looked at Qin Wushuang with a smile. Her expression was full of ambiguity. "Sis, what's wrong?" Qin Wushuang was a little confused. Then, he thought of something. Could it be that there's another matchmaker? After returning to the Qin manor, as Qian Buba predicted, the doorstep of the Qin manor was almost broken by matchmakers. Every day there were at least 3 or 4 classes, and at most a dozen. In the beginning, Qin Lianshan had welcomed them with a smile. In the end, even a well-mannered person like Qin Lianshan had lost his temper after being harassed by the matchmakers. He let Qin Xiu handle the reception. Of course, Qin Xiu had her own way of dealing with matchmakers. She used all kinds of methods to get rid of them. "Wushuang, today it's not a matchmaker, but a girl herself. She said she wants to see you." No wonder Qin Xiu's expression was so ambiguous. "Girl, who is it?" "We've seen that girl before, but she's not from River County. She said she's from the Redwood Martial Arts Academy." Qin Wushuang suddenly remembered someone and nodded. "Okay, I will go see her." Qin Xiu's smile became even brighter when she heard his words. Inwardly, she thought that this girl was not simple. Wushuang had never asked about those matchmakers and seemed not to be interested in any of their daughters. Could it be that there was something special about this girl? "Sis, don't get the wrong idea. Are you talking about that girl who was with the Yun sisters at the entrance of the forever flourishing jewelry store? How do you know? This girl is not simple." Qin Wushuang left these words and walked quickly towards the living room. Chapter 69. What a tragedy! Where can I find a recommendation ticket? Is no one willing to log in and vote when the weather is cold? In the living room, De Shiming was chatting with that girl. Since this girl and De Shiyu were classmates at the Redwood Martial Arts Academy, they had met each other at the De Shi household. Although they were not familiar with each other, they could still chat. De Shiming was a smart person. After chatting for a while, he saw that this girl was clearly anxious as she kept looking outside the door. He knew that she was worried that Qin Wushuang would not see her. At the moment, he did not point it out and only chatted for a while out of courtesy. At this time, De Shiming saw Qin Wushuang approaching from a distance. He smiled. "The main character is here, excuse me." When that girl saw Qin Wushuang had arrived, her face lit up with joy. She also walked up and said, "Young Master Qin, I thought you would burn the bridge after crossing the river and would not see me. Excuse me, miss. Last time I came in a hurry and did not have the time to ask for your name." Qin Wushuang made a hand gesture and motioned her to sit. "Now you remember to ask for my name, isn't it a bit late?" "Indeed, it was my negligence, please forgive me." Qin Wushuang was grateful for the information provided by this girl. If it weren't for her timely information, the Qin manor would have suffered unimaginable losses. And when they had returned the next day, most likely the Su family would have escaped without a trace. "Okay, your attitude is quite sincere. I will not keep you in suspense. My name is Tong Yao. I will only say it once, you must remember it well." "Tong Yao?" Qin Wushuang smiled. "Your name is so unique it would be hard to forget." "What's so unique about it? It's just a trick to use a homophone." Tong Yao did not think much of it as she said, "Yesterday the entire Su family was executed at the execution ground in the county city. Did you not go to watch?" Qin Wushuang smiled. "Traitors, what's there to watch? But speaking of this matter, I still have to thank you for your timely information." Tong Yao smiled proudly and asked, "Do you feel like you owe me a favor or something?" "Yes, that is indeed a big favor." Qin Wushuang's attitude was very sincere. He thought to himself, if you're here to ask for a favor, then that's good. After you return it, you'll be free of debt. "Do you want to return it?" Tong Yao blinked. "Miss, please ask for instructions. As long as I, Qin Wushuang, am able to do so, this favor must be returned. A real man clearly distinguishes between gratitude and grudges. A drop of water should be repaid with a gushing spring. Seeing that Qin Wushuang's attitude was so sincere, Tong Yao hesitated for a moment. She opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but then stopped. She gently held her chin as if she was thinking about something. If Miss is still undecided, why don't you stay in the Qin manor for a while and slowly make up your mind? Tong Yao shook her head as if she had made up her mind. All right, then I'll say it. This matter is still a secret for now. I only hope that after I tell you, Sir Qin can keep it a secret for me. This one has never been interested in gossiping. Okay. Tong Yao lightly bit her lips and said in a low voice with a serious expression, in 3 months the 4 royal territories will hold a nationwide martial arts student exam. Oh! Don't underestimate this exam. It's different than the normal exam. This is a special opportunity. Tong Yao's tone was full of yearning. How is it different? What's special about it? Let's put it this way. In the past, the martial arts student exam was held within the Baiyu country and sent to the Zhen Wu holy place to further their studies. To the selected martial arts students, it's like reaching the sky in one step, right? And this time, the final destination of the exam is far beyond the Baiyu country. Our Baiyu country is only in charge of selecting and transporting talent. If the exam results are good, the number of talents will reach a certain level. The Baiyu country can rise from a middle subordinate country to an upper subordinate country. These words had attracted Qin Wushuang's attention. If it was beyond the scope of the Baiyu country, could it have involved the mother country? The mother country of the Baiyu country was a middle-ranking empire. In this world, it ranked second and was the top existence in the entire land. In this Tianxian land, the countries were divided into 12 levels. The first class was the great empires, which were divided into 3 ranks: upper, middle, and lower. The second class was the free countries, which were also divided into 3 ranks: upper, middle, and lower. The third class was the subordinate countries, which were also divided into 3 ranks: upper, middle, and lower. The lowest class was the slave countries and the various slave tribes and territories, which were also divided into 3 ranks. The 4 levels and 12 levels formed the ruling echelon of the Tianxian land. For example, the Baiyu country was only a middle-ranking subordinate country. In the entire Tianxian land, it also had a low status. These are only the benefits for the country. And for individuals, once they stand out from the layers of selection, their future is even more limitless. The worst could enter the Zhen Wu holy place in the mother country to further their studies, and the better ones could even have the hope of receiving the spiritual fate. Spiritual fate? Receiving the spiritual fate? Qin Wushuang was moved inwardly. It was not the first time he had heard this term. Earlier, he had heard his father mention it. Only, his father did not know much about it and did not explain it in detail. Although he was moved, Qin Wushuang did not show any expression. Certainly, this Tong Yao had not come to the Qin manor to reveal a secret information to him. Seeing Qin Wushuang remain silent, Tong Yao could not hold back her anger. Young Master Qin, why are you not saying anything? Could it be that you do not trust my information? I have already learned about your information. However, the royal family and the Zhen Wu holy place have not announced such confidential information. Where did you get it? Young Master Qin, let's not talk about how my family makes a living by selling information. And I am pursuing my studies at the Redwood Martial Arts Academy. My teacher is one of the higher-ups of the academy. I have always been his assistant. It's not difficult for me to see some confidential information. Although it has not been announced, the news had already spread to the 4 royal territories. Only, all the states and counties have not received the news. When Tong Yao said this, Qin Wushuang believed her even more. Then, Tong Yao wanted him to return the favor. Could this favor be given in this martial arts student exam? Tong Yao was a meticulous person. She knew that Qin Wushuang had this question. She continued, "If young Master Qin is interested in participating in this exam, I would like to ask you for a favor. If it was just a normal martial arts student exam, Qin Wushuang would not be interested. However, since it was related to the spiritual affinity, it was much more attractive to Qin Wushuang. In his former world, he had reached the peak of martial arts. However, due to the limited training environment on Earth, he could not break through the bottleneck and enter the upper sky realm. And the spiritual affinity in this world was similar to the upper sky realm in his former world. Of course, he was very interested. How can I help? I have a little brother who is also participating in this exam. The minimum requirement for this exam is to be a level 7 martial arts student. You must be under 20 years old. In the 4 royal territories, 32 states, and a few hundred counties, there are at least 2,000 martial arts students above level 7. And my little brother is only barely qualified to sign up. Thus, I want you to help my little brother in the exam. You must help him get a spot." What's the problem? Tong Yao immediately asked when she saw Qin Wushuang's hesitation. "It's not a problem. If it's to take care of someone and give him some help, I believe I can do it for the martial arts student exam. However, your little brother's true strength has not reached that level. If he barely made it, would there be any problems after he gets selected? Young Master Qin, you don't need to worry about this. Regarding the spiritual affinity, not only does it require talent, it also requires luck. Some martial arts students are strong in the early stage. However, they do not have the spiritual roots and can only stay in the genuine force for the rest of their lives. The spiritual affinity requires a spiritual root. If young Master Qin is willing to help, you only need to take care of him during the exam. After that, you don't need to worry about anything else." After a moment of silence, Qin Wushuang nodded. "Okay, if it's only this matter, I will agree." Tong Yao was overjoyed. "Only this matter, if young Master Qin can help, it's already a great favor. Miss Tong, you have already done a good deed. How could I not return the favor?" Tong Yao smiled from ear to ear. The exact rules of the exam are complicated. If you want to participate, you must gather at Prince Akaji in 3 months. At that time, I will explain the rules to you. According to the rules, each martial arts student must remain anonymous and wear a mask. You must hide your identity and completely mess up the order of the exam. This is to prevent martial arts students from the same place from getting entangled and attacking those who don't. Okay. As long as you can let me know how to find your little brother at the exam site, I will take care of the rest." Tong Yao was extremely satisfied when she received Qin Wushuang's promise. She suddenly changed the topic. "According to the rumors, young Master De Shi and Missy Qin are in close contact. For this matter, are you really not worried about the Shi Men feudal lords? Also, I will give you a piece of information. For sure, a few of the Shi Men feudal lords will participate. They are all stage 8 or 9 martial arts students. What does the participation of the Shi Men feudal lords have to do with me?" Tong Yao smiled strangely. According to the rumors, during the wealthy class battle, the Qin family and the Shi Men feudal lords had become enemies. They had already secretly competed against each other a few times. Could the rumors be false? There is no smoke without fire. The rumors might not be false, but it is not as complicated as you think. Qin Wushuang did not want to talk too much about the Shi Men feudal lords before outsiders. Although the Shi Men feudal lords had threatened the Qin family and Qin Wushuang's shout was known by everyone in River County, outsiders did not know the exact details. Although Qin Wushuang was not afraid of that Shi Men feudal lords, he did not want others to see the Qin family's troubles. Chapter 70. P.S. Some readers keep mentioning the group number, but the book review section is not allowed. Here, the group number is 1811761. Continue to ask for recommendation vote. He had to admit that the feng shui of the Qin manor was indeed very nourishing. It was definitely an excellent environment for warriors to practice. Originally, Qin Wushuang planned to use 3 months to complete the basic training for this group of guards. He didn't expect that after only 1 month of hard work, the results would almost reach the level of 3 months. Qin Wushuang was very happy. The plan could be brought forward one step. At 3 o'clock in the morning, the team finished gathering. They waited for Qin Wushuang to give the order. After more than a month of training, everyone was completely used to this kind of high-intensity training. Qin Wushuang smiled and said, "After today, there will be new homework and new gains. Everyone, work hard. I have seen the results of the past month. Your sweat will not be in vain. Today, the results of the special training will be preliminarily tested." With these words, everyone's interest was suddenly aroused. After more than a month of hellish training, was it finally time to test it? In this way, everyone worked even harder to complete the morning and afternoon homework. After the afternoon, before the assembly time, all the guards had already gathered together in the martial arts field. From their fanatical expressions, it could be seen that they were very anxious. After all, after more than a month of hard work, everyone wanted to know whether this special training could achieve the young master's goal, and how much substantial improvement there was. Qin Lianchuan came, and then Qin Wushuang also came. Seeing the young master and the captain coming one after the other, everyone's breathing became rapid, and the light in their eyes became more fanatical. Before Qin Lianchuan shouted the order, the team had already lined up uniformly. Seeing this scene, Qin Wushuang was very gratified. The hearts of the people were useful. "Uncle Lianchuan, in this month, what do you think of the improvement of the brothers?" 4 words, reborn. Qin Lianchuan said concisely. At the moment, his admiration for Qin Wushuang had reached the point of no return. Not to mention that he had never heard of such a training method, its effects were something he had never even dared to dream of. "Alright, today, let's test whether their progress can really be described as reborn." Qin Wushuang took out a name list from his sleeve and handed it to Qin Lianchuan. "Uncle Lianchuan, please take a look at the names. There are 3 groups here. Please name them one by one." Qin Lianchuan looked at the name list and nodded. He cleared his throat and said loudly, "Everyone, listen carefully. The first batch of 40 people, those whose names are called, come to the front and line up in 2 lines. Yes. Alright, Qin Yong, Qin Fei, Qin Tong, Qin Ming, 40 names were announced in one breath. Those whose names were called immediately stepped forward and lined up neatly in front of them in 2 rows, each with 20 people. The 40 of you have long arms and slender waists. You have quick reflexes and a calm mind. You are most suitable to be archers. They were organized into a team named Flying Feather. Got it? Roar. Once the order was given, the 40 people responded in unison without any hesitation. Qin Wushuang nodded with satisfaction. This batch of people, just like what he had observed, had the quickest reflexes. Even when it came to giving orders, they were faster than the rest. The second batch of 40 people, the name list is as follows. Qin Yu, Qin Nan, Qin Fang. Another 40 people stepped out and lined up in 2 lines. Their expressions were serious as they waited for Qin Lianchuan to continue. The 40 of you have outstanding bravery, swift and fierce personalities. You are suitable for close combat. You will be organized into a team named Xiong Pai. Got it? Roar. The third batch of 19 people, the name list is as follows. The last 19 people, seeing that their companions were all called out and only they were left, felt a little uneasy and unfair. During the usual training, their performance was very good. They were even more outstanding than some of their companions. Why were the 19 of them not part of the main force? The 19 of you, are you a little unhappy? Qin Wushuang suddenly stepped forward and asked with a smile. These 19 men were originally the elite of the guards. They had been holding their breath for a long time. When they heard Qin Wushuang's question, their faces all turned red. From their eyes and expressions, it was obvious that their hearts were in turmoil. It was the same month of hard work, the same month of struggle. Their efforts were not less than others, their performance was not weaker than others. Why were they placed last? It would be a lie to say that they did not feel wronged. Very good, if you are unhappy, then show it. My brave warriors! Qin Wushuang clapped his hands and smiled. I am happy to tell you that you are placed last, not because your performance is bad, but because it is a reward for you. The 19 of you will form a team called Falcon. What are the characteristics of a falcon? Qin Wushuang said with a long tone. Suddenly, his expression became serious and he shouted, What are the characteristics of a falcon, who can answer me? Fierce. Good at attacking. Sharp eyesight, can observe from a wide range of angles. Falcon soars the sky, elegant. Domineering. There were all kinds of answers. Qin Wushuang nodded his head lightly. After waiting for everyone to speak, he stood up and concluded, What you have said is only one aspect of a falcon. The greatest characteristic of a falcon is that once it attacks, it will definitely be fatal. Slowly glancing at the 19 fanatical and expectant faces, Qin Wushuang raised his arms and said, The 19 of you will be the vanguard of our Qin Manor, the falcon of our Qin Manor. The Flying Feather and Xiong Pai teams will be our regular troops, while the Falcon team will be the elite troops of the Qin Manor, the trump card team. The Flying Feather and Xiong Pai teams, as the Qin Manor prospers, will continue to expand their troop. As for the Falcon team, although it will also expand, the entry requirements will be twice as high as the other two teams. Qin Wushuang's idea of building a team, combined with the 21st century Earth's idea of building an army, focused on diversity and three-dimensional. The Xiong Pai team was equivalent to the ground troops, the assault troops. The Flying Feather team was similar to the air troops, using the height and width of the terrain to kill the enemy. And the Falcon team was the special forces, regardless of whether it was stealth, sniping, assassination, or defense, they must be equipped with all kinds of skills. The training content for the first two teams was relatively simple. As for the Falcon team's training, Qin Wushuang personally inspected the 19 people's bone structure, talent, and physique, and combined many other factors to finalize the 19 people. These 19 people would also be the trump cards of the Qin Manor's guards. The 19 members only now understood that they were the last batch to appear, not because they fell behind, but because they were the last to appear. Qin Wushuang waved his hand, indicating for everyone to calm down. With an encouraging tone, he said, Of course, this is only the result of my inspection after the first phase of training. No one needs to be cocky, and no one needs to be depressed. If you, the Flying Feather and Xiong Pai teams, feel that you want to enter the Falcon team, then very well, bring out your performance. If you are indeed suitable, we will not stick to one pattern when selecting talents. Of course, the Falcon team does not need to be complacent. If you slack off in the future training, you will also be kicked out of the team. My request for all of you is to be able to bring out your greatest potential in your own position, and this is the greatest success. As soon as he said these words, the people of the Flying Feather and Xiong Pai teams felt much more comfortable. That's right, everyone was the guards of the Qin Manor, and they were all working hard for the wealthy Qin family. If they performed well in their own positions, how could the higher-ups not see it? Remember, if you are gold, sooner or later you will shine. Qin Wushuang continued to encourage them. All your hard work, all your progress, we will see it. Now, whether it is a mule or a horse, let's take it out for a walk. Members of the Flying Feather team, step out. Take 3 steps forward. The 40 people of the Flying Feather team immediately took 3 steps forward. Qin Wushuang clapped his hands and immediately, a large group of footsteps came from the outside. A group of servants of the Qin manor carried a dozen big boxes and quickly came forward. They put down the boxes and then retreated respectfully. Qin Yong, Qin Fei, step out. Two vigorous young men walked out from the flying feather team. Open the boxes. The two of them immediately opened all the boxes. Inside the boxes, a dozen strong bows were placed neatly. Qin Yong, try the strength of this bow. Qin Yong received the order and picked up a bow. He used his arm strength and pulled it 3 times. The bow was full of strength and the curve was beautiful. The craftsmanship was excellent, and one could not bear to put it down. These 80 bows were made a month ago through various connections. Prince Akagi was commissioned to make them. The materials used are top-quality fire rhinoceros horn and purple bamboo. 40 of them have a strength of 240 pounds. The other 40 have a strength of 360 pounds. 240 pounds. Qin Yong looked at it with disbelief. Don't doubt it, the bow in your hand is a 240-pound bow. These 40 bows are only for the next year. After 1 year, all of them will use 360 pounds of strength. Do you guys have the confidence? Yes. After a month of training, their strength had doubled. Of course, this had made these iron-blooded men 100 times more confident. The equipment of the bear team will also be delivered in the next 2 days. Hunting team, step out and follow me to climb the Great Song Mountains. The other 2 teams, continue with your afternoon training. From tomorrow onwards we will increase the skill training. Under Qin Wushuang's hard work, the embryonic form of an iron-blooded army was beginning to take shape. Qidian Chinese website welcomes all readers to read the latest, fastest, and most popular series of novels at Qidian Originals. Chapter 71. P.S. Push it this afternoon. Brothers, let's recommend him. There was not much time left for Qin Wushuang to train the hunting hawk team. 1 month after Tong Yao had left, within the 4 royal territories of the Bayou country, rumors about the exam began to spread. Martial Arts Student Exam. This time, the Martial Arts Student Exam had come out of the blue without any warning. If it was only a martial arts student exam within the Bayou country, then many feudal lords and venerable families would have learned about it beforehand. But this time, none of the great clans or aristocratic families within the prefectures or counties had received a single hint of information beforehand. The fact that the news had been tightly covered made everyone realize that this was not a simple exam. Indeed, the following official announcement had confirmed everyone's guess. The minimum qualification for the martial arts student exam. Level 7. Age limit. 20 years old. Exam content. Confidential exam rules. Hide your background, name, and strength. All the martial arts students within the Bayou country were to be numbered and sent into the exam at random. All cheating and favoritism would be prohibited. The most shocking part was the following addition. This exam was free to sign up. Once you participated, your life and death would not matter. The minimum requirement was to be a level 7 martial arts student. This had instantly extinguished the fiery heart of countless martial arts students who had been looking forward to the exam. As for the addition of not caring about life and death, although it seemed shocking, it was not a big deal. However, in any country in the Tianxian land that valued martial arts, it would not be a threat. Of course, the Bayou country was not an exception. In a world that valued martial arts, almost all disputes were solved with violence. Death and injury were never a new topic. In the martial arts student exam, the topic of life and death was not that scary. At noon, on the Great Song Mountain, the sun was in the middle of the sky. This was Qin Wushuang's favorite time every day and the best time for him to train. Qin Wushuang had already reached the highest level in the practice of the Sun Force. After the wealthy class competition had ended, Qin Wushuang felt that time was running out. He trained even more diligently and each day, he had integrated his practice into the perfect stage of the sun force. Qin Wushuang was not afraid of the cruel and ruthless sun at noon. He fixed his eyes on that scorching sun. At his level of kung fu, he was already used to staring at the scorching sun. He did not have to worry about his eyes being burned. In the eyes of a powerful martial artist, that scorching sun was just a big red fireball. Streams of fiery air were flowing through Qin Wushuang's limbs and bones. He enjoyed this pleasant feeling very much. He was very familiar with this feeling in his previous life. It was the sign that the Flaming Sun Sutra had reached perfection. The sea can contain hundreds of rivers, and it is great to be tolerant. The unique characteristic of the Sunblaze True Qi was that it gathered all of the true Qi in the Dantian and formed a major circulation from countless small circulations. Once a great cycle of reincarnation was completed, it meant that the Flaming Sun Zhen Qi had been cultivated to the great circle of perfection. If he's strong, I'm stronger. If he's tyrannical, I'm tyrannical. If he's tyrannical, I'm tyrannical. The enemy is strong and the enemy is tyrannical. Let him be, I will stand tall like Vajra. This was the mnemonic chant of the Flaming Sun scripture. Qin Wushuang couldn't help but ponder. The comprehension in his mind was like a carp crossing a river, coming one after another. In an instant, he felt unlimited inspiration. This was a type of gradual comprehension that was like dripping water penetrating a stone. It was also a sudden enlightenment. As the gradual comprehension and sudden enlightenment combined, Qin Wushuang's eyes shone brightly. Suddenly, his eyes widened and he let out a shout. He struck out with his palm and a fierce air current was expelled from the center of his palm. Voila! The trees in front of him suddenly fell down, emitting a fierce green smoke. They were actually ignited by the power of the palm. Qin Wushuang let out a proud roar and stood up. His palm moved casually, immediately causing sand and stones to fly and a sea of fire to fill the sky. Great circle, it's really great circle. Qin Wushuang was elated. His fists and palms intersected, and he was extremely happy. Once I reach the great circle, the last move of 9 suns palms will naturally be completed. Although I haven't reached 100% of my previous life strength, I have at least 90% of my previous life strength. Stage 8 of the genuine martial realm? While he was thinking, the 9 suns palms was like flowing clouds and flowing water, continuous and surging. The 8th move, Desolation of the 8 Suns. Huff. Qin Wushuang didn't use any hand gestures. Instead, he combined his thoughts and his palms drew 9 small circles. They overlapped and the power of the palm was released. It was as if the mountains were collapsing, the earth was cracking, and the sky was collapsing. The 9th move, 9 suns destroy the world. Boom, boom, boom. A thunderous sound resounded through the entire Great Song Mountain, causing people to almost think that the Great Song Mountain would collapse and a landslide would occur. The power of the 9 suns destroy the world is indeed far greater than the previous 8 moves. Qin Wushuang looked at the surging power of the palm. It was the first time after his rebirth that he was so excited. Finally, he had faintly touched the pulse of his previous life's peak. This was a very familiar feeling. The strongest and most young, only my flaming sun, water and fire cannot invade, and swords and spears can block. This was the great circle of flaming sun scripture. When combined with 9 suns palms, they complemented each other and could even shatter mountains and split the earth. Its power was like a raging fire, and its sharpness was like swords and spears. Thus, 9 suns palms was completed. Although he still needed time to consolidate it, Qin Wushuang was now full of confidence. Even if the patriarch of the Shi-Men feudal lords came, even if his opponent was at stage 9 of the genuine force, he was confident that he could win. He was confident that he could use the perfect flaming sun genuine qi to completely destroy the other party. Although Qin Wushuang did not want to admit it, He had to admit that the training environment in this Tianxian land was much better than the training environment on Earth. He estimated that it was at least 3 to 5 times better than his previous life. With such a geographical environment, Qin Wushuang was even more confident to challenge the upper sky alchemy realm that he had not broken through in his previous life. This was the realm he had dreamed of in his previous life. He believed that in this life it would come true. Martial arts student exam? Spiritual affinity? For the first time in this life, Qin Wushuang had a trace of expectation for the upcoming events. When he came down the mountain, Qin Xiu was already waiting for him at the foot of the mountain. This was Qin Xiu's old habit for many years. Sis, big brother de Shi and matriarch de Shi have returned to the county. Are you not used to it? Qin Xiu pretended to be angry. Wushuang, are you also here to make fun of me? Haha, of course I can. I, your little brother, also hope that my sister and big brother de Shi can become a couple. Sister, wait for me for a year, at most a year. I will definitely clear up this unresolved matter. Clear. Qin Xiu could not understand the meaning of these words. Have you forgotten about Shi Men Yen from the Shi Men feudal lords? Qin Wushuang said lightly. If the Shi Men feudal lords did not cancel this marriage, it would be a big problem. Wushuang, I heard from Big Brother de Shi that Shi Men Yen has a bad personality and is extremely shameless. If Big Brother de Shi were to be with her, he would not be happy for the rest of his life. However, Shi Men Yan's reputation in South Cloud State is terrible. The feudal lords would certainly not marry her. And she also likes Big Brother de Shi. It would be difficult for them to cancel the marriage. If it were only the venerable de Shi family, it would be impossible to cancel the marriage. But, Qin Wushuang revealed a confident smile and mumbled to himself, this time, when I go to the Redwood Royal City, I will gather at South Cloud State. At that time, I will see if I can take care of this matter. Wushuang, you. Qin Xiu blinked her eyes and said with a confused face, you better not provoke the Shi Men feudal lords. I know what I am doing. Qin Wushuang nodded. Sis, I am going to talk to father about something. Recently, Qin Lianshan had been very busy. He had entrusted almost all the matters in the manor to Qin Cixi. Qin Cixi was the one who made all the decisions. He was busy because he was busy with training. After winning the wealthy class battle, Qin Lianshan had fully realized how important it was to a family whether an individual's strength was strong or not. Qin Wushuang had written the classics of tendon changing for him. It was divided into 3 parts: upper, middle, and lower. A few years ago, he had only practiced the upper part and had reached stage 4 from stage 1 of the genuine force. It made him realize that the fortuitous opportunity his son had received from the Great Song Mountain was indeed extraordinary. During this time, he had been trying to understand the content of the middle part. Naturally, the middle part's profound meaning was much more profound than the upper part. However, after he had practiced the upper part, Qin Lianshan clearly felt that his bones, muscles, fur, and inner organs had become 20 or 30 years younger. At almost 50 years of age, regardless of his body condition or his energy, he was showing signs of returning to his youth. With the foundation of the upper part, it would be much easier to train the middle part. When he saw his son, Qin Lianshan was in a good mood. Wushuang, thank you for your hard work during this time. I am ashamed that I have become a hands-off boss. Father, there are still 2 months until the martial arts student exam. I want to leave half a month earlier. In the next 1.5 months, I will focus on training the hunting hawk team. Uncle Lianchuan will be in charge of the bear fighters and the flying feathers team. After 1.5 months, I will go to the Redwood Royal City to register. I will leave the hunting hawk team to you. Yes, Wushuang, thank you for your hard work during this time. Do your best in that martial arts student exam. I believe that with your strength, it will be a piece of cake. The key is whether you can get the spiritual affinity. On the other hand, Qin Wushuang was open-minded. Spiritual affinity? Since it's fate, then it's up to fate. I would never place all my hopes on others. Could it be that to enter the upper sky spiritual martial force, I must get someone else's spiritual affinity? I don't believe it. This time, I only want to broaden my horizons. If I can see what the spiritual martial force is, then it would be perfect. As for whether or not I can get the spiritual affinity, that's not important. How many people, in order to get the spiritual affinity, had spent a few generations of effort and failed on the verge of success? Why, Wushuang, do you think it's not important? Wushuang, do you know what it means to enter the spiritual martial force? Father, I also heard a saying, there is no free lunch in the world. If I give you one spiritual affinity, it might mean I have to sell it to you for the rest of my life. I think that although the pursuit of martial arts is precious, it cannot replace freedom. Freedom is the most precious thing under the heavens. If you lose your freedom as the price, no matter what stage you are in, it is worth it. Similarly, only by possessing freedom would one be able to pursue the martial Tao unfettered and unrestrained, and only then would one be able to climb to a higher and further realm. Qin Lianshan was overwhelmed with emotions, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. Now, he finally understood how extraordinary his son was. Such temperament, such breadth of mind, such foresight, and such style of conversation with such a son, what else could he say? Qidian website welcomes all readers to read. The newest, fastest, and most popular works are all at Qidian. Chapter 72. I'm forcing it. Brothers, the exciting part is about to come. Haha. Qin Wushuang's special training for the Falcon team was very detailed. The main direction was assassination, ambush, combat, and movement. These four directions, when taken together, actually complemented each other and were even interlinked. Qin Wushuang taught according to their aptitude and divided them into groups according to their characteristic. The 19 members were divided into 3 groups. The first group had 7 members and the second group had 6 members. Between each group, there was a clear division of labor and training for cooperation. Of course, these 19 people had the same basic cultivation method. They were all practicing the first part of the muscle-bone strengthening scripture. This was Qin Wushuang's only choice. Because the youngest of these guards was over 18, and the oldest was close to 30. Everyone had missed the best time to practice martial arts in their youth. Without practicing the muscle-bone strengthening scripture, their bodies could be completely transformed and they could be reborn. On the one hand, practicing the muscle-bone strengthening scripture would make it easier for his father, Qin Lianshan, to take over in the future. After all, Qin Lianshan was practicing the muscle-bone strengthening scripture. With the muscle-bone strengthening scripture as their foundation, it would not be a problem for these 19 people to enter the genuine force realm within a year. A genuine force realm warrior was not scary. What was scary was that all 19 of them were in the genuine force realm. In this way, this team's scary and special characteristics would be revealed. The scariest thing was that Qin Wushuang had specially trained them to fight in group. After absorbing the formations left behind by the famous sects in his previous life, their power was astonishing. Each group had a formation. When the 3 groups were combined, they formed a large formation. There was a formation within a formation. Even though these 19 members were only in the first level of the genuine force realm, with the help of the small formations, they could deal with a genuine force realm warrior in the 5th level. Once the large formation was activated, even a genuine force realm warrior in the 7th level would be in trouble. Of course, Qin Wushuang's training was multifaceted. His goals were not limited to these. According to his estimation, after the muscle-bone strengthening scripture-esque transformation, these members would need only 3 years to reach the 3rd level of the genuine force realm. 5 years later, his cultivation would reach stage 5 of the genuine martial realm. Of course, according to his observation, once they reached the 5th stage of the true martial realm, some of these team members would reach their limits, and a huge bottleneck would appear in their progress. At that time, if there was no external help, it would be very difficult to level up again. Of course, among these 19 people, there were a few outstanding ones. Qin Wushuang estimated that their limit should be at stage 7 or even stage 8 of the true martial realm. Qin Wushuang had every reason to look forward to how powerful the Qin manner would be 5 years later. 19 stage 5 warriors of the genuine force, coupled with the heaven-defying array from his previous life, could be bluntly said. Even if it was the family head of the Shimen feudal lords, a stage 9 warrior of the genuine force, he would definitely be at a disadvantage. Moreover, Qin Wushuang's trump card was far from as simple as a group battle array. The skills that he imparted to everyone were very targeted. Qin Wushuang did not have any other hobbies in his previous life. His only hobby was collecting martial arts manuals and reading all kinds of martial arts manuals. In his head, it was like an encyclopedia of martial arts manuals. At this time, teaching according to the student's aptitude was like a fish in water. Qin Wushuang had specialized training for assassination skills, defense skills, poison skills, detection skills, concealment skills, and various other skills. The 19 members of the Hunting Hawk team also realized that the young master's special training was a form of affirmation and a form of hope for them. When they understood this point, the members of the Hunting Hawk team were even more motivated. They were filled with hot blood for the wealthy Qin family. They also finally understood that the young master was not lying when he said that he would train them into an iron army. He was also not lying when he said that he would train them into warriors that could fight against 100 people. He was not lying when he said that he would make the Qin manor impregnable. In the next 1.5 months, besides training the team, Qin Wushuang spent his time consolidating his own strength. Although the martial arts student exam was not challenging, after all, it was his first exam in the Tian Xian land. It could even be said that it was his first time walking out of River County. For years, he had waited for 4 years to take this step. However, Qin Wushuang did not regret it. These 4 years of forbearance and concealing his strength were worth it. Without these 4 years, how could he have recovered 90% of his strength from his previous life? Without strength, how could he walk out with the capital? 1.5 months had passed in the blink of an eye. After the reorganization of the Qin Manor's guards, they looked brand new. Although the Hunting Hawk team had become more mysterious, the combat power of the Flying Feather and Xiong Brothers teams had also increased several times. Plus, Qin Wushuang had modified the hidden mechanisms of the Qin Manor and used the terrain to set up a dozen blind spots. He had built the entire manor into an impregnable fortress. With the current combat power of the Qin Manor, not to mention the Su family, even if the cold-blooded 13 hawks of the Shimen feudal lords were to attack, they would have enough capital to deal with them. The 6th of June was an auspicious day and suitable for traveling. Within River County, there were originally 4 level 7 martial arts students under the age of 20. They were De Shiyang, Yun Qinyan, Su Ting, and Qin Wushuang. De Shiyang was a level 8 martial arts student, and the other 3 were level 7. Su Shi had long become a guest of the Yellow Springs in the Qin Manor, so she was naturally excluded. This way, only 3 people were qualified to sign up in River County. Compared to the other big counties, this was quite shabby. At least, among the 8 counties in South Cloud State, this result was the lowest. Per Qin Wushuang's original intention, he had planned to travel alone. However, De Shi Ming had already asked him to travel with De Shiyang at the county city. Since De Shi Ming had said it, Qin Wushuang could not refuse. He also had a good impression of De Shiyang. It would be nice to have someone traveling with him and pass the time along the way. and the wealthy Yun family, especially Patriarch Yun Tianhao, could not contain his joy when he received the news. It was a great opportunity, a great opportunity. During this time, the wealthy Qian family had always been jealous of the Yun family. Both sides had already fought a few times over their daughter's marriage. They only had one goal: to become in-laws with the wealthy Qin family. Now, Yun Qinyan from the Yun family had met the requirements to sign up and had an excuse to get close to her in-laws. The journey was long and full of glory. Wasn't this a great opportunity? The more Yun Tianhao thought about it, the happier he became. Through various channels, he heard that Qin Wushuang was preparing to travel with De Shiyang. Immediately, he had another idea. You two men should take care of the girl along the way, right? You can't just abandon the girl and let her travel alone, right? Although De Shiyang was on the side, and it was a fly in the ointment, Yun Tianhao did not have the guts to talk about the venerable De Shi family's matters. Overall, it was the most important thing that his daughter could enter that little gang. This way, just as De Shi Ming and Qin Xiu were sending off the two young people, Yun Tianhao arrived with his daughter. Haha, the heavens have taken pity on us, we came just in time. You two young masters are dragons among men, surely you are also going to South Cloud State City, right? Coincidentally, my daughter is going with you. The three of you will travel together and take care of each other. When we arrive at South Cloud State City, or even the Redwood Royal City, we will not be bullied easily. When Yun Tianhao had said these words, Qin Wushuang and De Shiyang looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Take care of each other? With Yun Qingyan's temperament, what could they expect her to take care of them? There was a saying that one would not slap a smiling person. Since they were traveling together, they could not refuse. They could only travel together. Yun Qingyan had received countless reminders at home. She also knew that before these two, she had no right to lose her temper. Although she could not deliberately flatter Qin Wushuang and De Shiyang, she could still control her temper. They traveled at a moderate speed and arrived at South Cloud State City 2 days later. If River County had given Qin Wushuang a great shock, then the shock he received from South Cloud State was 10 times stronger than the one he received from Qin Wushuang. Regardless of the buildings, the scale of the city, or the degree of prosperity, it was enough to overshadow River County by 10 times. No wonder it was a state city. The three of them rode their horses slowly. When they arrived at the state city, they were unfamiliar with the place and people. Thus, they could not be too presumptuous. Besides, Qin Wushuang and De Shiyang were not the flamboyant type. While they were traveling, suddenly, the sound of hurried horse hooves came from behind them. Next, a series of shouts came. Move, move! Move aside! Qidian website welcomes all readers to read. The newest, fastest, and most popular series are all original works at Qidian. Chapter 73. Today's third update. There is one more update at midnight. Everyone, please prepare your recommendation tickets and fire at me, haha. This shout was fierce and tyrannical. Before Qin Wushuang turned his head, he heard that these riders had no intention to slow down. He also did not want to cause more trouble. Thus, he pulled the reins and evaded to the side. The main street of the city was extremely wide. There were different kinds of stalls on both sides of the street. Each stall was crowded with people. When they heard the sound of horse hooves, they did not slow down and evaded. This way you pushed me, I pushed you. Instantly, many stalls were scattered, and some hot-tempered teenagers all started to curse in a low voice. What is this? Riding a horse on the main street, why are you pretending to be a big shot? Someone muttered with dissatisfaction. There were some teenage riders on the horses. They waved their whips and roared with laughter as if they were enjoying this chaotic scene. When they heard someone cursing, they waved the horsewhip and whipped the head of that person who had muttered earlier. Pah! The whip landed squarely on the man's face. Instantly, as if a dagger had slashed across, it left a long bloody mark. His skin was torn open and his flesh was torn open. It was so painful that that guy covered his face and cried bitterly as he squatted down. This whip was very effective. Those people who were cursing in a low voice all stopped talking and kept quiet out of fear. They even carefully hid their angry expression. When they had bumped into such young thugs, just by looking at their clothing, they knew they were not to be trifled with. The young man who whipped the man had a pair of triangular eyes and a cold expression. After whipping the man, he coldly snorted and said, "You blind thing. In South Cloud State City, other people can't ride horses, but that doesn't mean we can't. Okay, young Master Hong, don't lower yourself to the same level as these people. Yes, this time we have gained a lot. Haha, I can brag when I see young Master Xing. Let's go, don't let him get impatient." When that teenage martial arts student with triangular eyes heard the two words, young Master Xing, a few traces of respect appeared on his face. He turned his horse around and left. Qin Wushuang had witnessed this little episode from beginning to end. However, his mood was calm and without any ripples. Young ruffians bullied others. This was the case in both the previous and the current life. Although that triangular-eyed young thug was immoral and fierce, in Qin Wushuang's eyes, he was just SOSO. Compared to the second generation of the rich and the second generation of the government officials in his previous life, it was a piece of cake. In her previous life, the young thug would race and kill someone without even stopping. "My father is XX. That domineering aura was much more impressive than the previous one." Qin Wushuang and De Shiyang did not make a sound. On the contrary, Yun Qinyan could not take it any more as she mumbled, "It's not right to ride a horse on the street. How dare you hit someone so fiercely?" After she had finished muttering, she saw that Qin Wushuang and De Shiyang were both smiling as if they had turned a deaf ear to everything before them. Yun Qinyan could not help but complain, "You too, could it be that you don't feel anything?" De Shiyang sighed, "For such things, I don't know how many times it happens in the world. If I were to feel something for each incident, then I wouldn't be able to do anything. I'm afraid I wouldn't have enough time to feel it. Then can I just turn a blind eye to it?" Yun Qinyan became serious. "Missy Yun, what do you think I should do?" De Shiyang asked back. Initially, Yun Qinyan was confident. However, after thinking for a moment, she realized that she had no words to refute him. Seeing injustice on the road? Apparently, from the way those thugs dressed, most likely none of them had a lower status than her wealthy class Yun. In terms of strength, that whip attack from them was much stronger than hers. Since she could not beat them, could she just curse them to vent her anger? To tell the truth, with those vicious looks, if she had cursed them, most likely the next whip would have landed on Yun Qingyan's head. Since she could not beat them, nor did she dare to curse them, she could only stare at them. However, the more she thought about it, the more she felt wronged. Usually, she did have a little missy temper. However, it would only happen when someone provoked her. It was not her style to take the initiative to bully others, or even humiliate others like those thugs. In the end, deep in her bones, she still felt that it would be too much if a martial artist did not uphold justice. However, it would be too much if they used their skills to bully ordinary people. "Don't be angry here, let's go." Qin Wushuang did not speak a word. When he saw these two had finished expressing their opinions, he stepped out to mediate the situation. According to the rules, all martial arts students from the 8 counties in South Cloud State must go to the government office to fill out the registration form. Then, they would all go to the Redwood Royal City. Apparently, it was not the first time De Shiyang had come to South Cloud State City. In a moment, he had arrived at the government office with ease. The registration process was simple. After he had filled out a form, he had signed up successfully. The person in charge of the registration was also an emissary from the Zhen Wu holy place. When he saw Qin Wushuang's registration form, He glanced at it and raised his head in surprise when he saw the information on it. You are Qin Wushuang from River County? That's me. Oh, nice. Nice young man. That messenger from the Zhen Wu holy place stacked the registration forms together. Among the 8 counties in South Cloud State, River County has the least number of Level 7 martial arts students. However, with you, Qin Wushuang, River County's result will not be too bad. Qin Wushuang replied politely, Thank you for your compliment, I am ashamed. Haha, it's a good thing that young people are neither arrogant nor impatient. That messenger seemed to have remembered something. You will depart from the government office and turn 3 streets southwest. Then, you will arrive at the central square of South Cloud State. All martial arts students from South Cloud State will gather there. This martial arts student exam was also related to the reputation of the place. Thus, all states and counties cared about it. Among the 8 counties in Prince Akaji, South Cloud State was one of the best. This time, South Cloud State is placing great importance on it. You guys should go and listen to the news. After they had left the government office, De Shi Ming strongly insisted on going to the square to take a look and meet all the elite warriors from South Cloud State. Yun Qinyan was also quite enthusiastic. When Qin Wushuang saw that they all wanted to go, he agreed. When the 3 of them arrived at the square, martial arts students from the 8 counties had already gathered there in groups of 3 to 5. These martial arts students were grouped into groups. Martial arts students from each county had their own factions. It was easy to distinguish them. Indeed, from the number of people, River County had the least number of Level 7 martial arts students. For the other counties, there were at least 4 or 5, and at most 7 or 8. The largest batch had 30 to 40 of them. That triangular-eyed young thug from before was also among that group. De Shiyang whispered, Indeed, this group should be people from the city. No wonder they dared to gallop around the city. They must have someone from the top. The size of one South Cloud City was equivalent to 7 or 8 counties combined. It was not strange to have a few dozen Level 7 martial arts students. Most of these martial arts students were dressed like children of the venerable families. A few of them dressed like children of the venerable families were those who smiled obsequiously and acted as extras. When Qin Wushuang and his 2 friends approached them, that triangular-eyed martial arts student had also noticed them. A cold sneer emerged from the corner of his mouth, as if he despised these 3. When Yun Qinyan saw this, she twitched the corner of her mouth and whispered, Show off. Qin Wushuang did not have the time to pay attention to these boring battles. Instead, he used his eyes to observe each of the movements of each martial arts student who had signed up. After all, today's stage was not only River County, but South Cloud State. Since it was known as one of the top states in Prince Akaji, there must be a lot of talent. After a moment of observation, he realized that although each county had some talents, they were limited. The real attraction would be among those people from the city. From his estimation, not all the martial arts students from the city had arrived. While he was concentrating, suddenly, a light sound of breaking through the air emerged next to his ears. Immediately, Yun Qinyan gave a cry of ah as the horse lost its footing. Its legs went soft and her entire body fell from the horse's back. Fortunately, Yun Qinyan had good reflexes. Before she fell, she supported herself with one hand and bounced up to stand on the side. Even so, she was still in an embarrassing state. Waves of laughter emerged from that group of martial arts students from the city. Especially that triangular-eyed martial arts student, he was the proudest. He even whistled and rejoiced in her misfortune. In her entire life, Yun Qinyan had never suffered such a loss. She kicked the horse's back. Darn you animal, why did you go crazy all of a sudden? When Qin Wushuang saw the situation, he said lightly, Missy Yun, why are you getting angry at an animal? It almost caused me to fall. Who else should I scold? Qin Wushuang laughed leisurely. It was not this animal that caused you to fall, but another animal. Look at the joint of your horse's front hoof. Stunned, Yun Qinyan went up to take a look. Her expression changed drastically. Something had hit the joint of her front leg and a giant hole had opened up. She knelt on the ground and blood kept oozing out. Yun Qinyan was furious. When she remembered the laughter from that group of people, she lost her temper and scolded. Which despicable person is worse than an animal? What kind of skill does it have to be to plot against an animal? When that group of martial arts students from the city saw a beautiful girl flipping out, they laughed even more enthusiastically. They added fuel to the fire and started to jeer. Then, they looked at that triangular-eyed martial arts student. That triangular-eyed martial arts student sneered and walked up while patting his horse. Girl, watch your mouth. I hurt your horse. This is a warning to you, don't talk too much in the future. Indeed, it's you despicable person. I said you were showing off, and you did. What are you going to do? Before the triangular-eyed martial arts student had spoken, De Shiyang came out to smooth things over. Everyone, we are all people of South Cloud State. This trip is related to the honor and disgrace of South Cloud State. We should share weal and woe together. How could we harm our friendship over such a small matter? It would have been fine if De Shiyang had not stepped out. With only Yun Qinyan as a girl, the other party would have a limit. However, as soon as De Shiyang stepped out, the atmosphere changed. Between males, it was always difficult to convince the other party. And it was easy to start a dispute. When Qin Wushuang saw De Shiyang had spoken, he knew that the situation was going to turn bad. He saw that triangular-eyed martial arts student looking for trouble. What good would come out of it if De Shiyang went up? Indeed, that triangular-eyed martial arts student sneered and sized De Shiyang up rudely. Who are you? What qualifications do you have to pretend to be a peacemaker? De Shiyang frowned slightly. Inwardly, he wondered if this person had too much energy and had nowhere to vent it. How come he had shown such a face when they had just met? Chapter 74. A new day has arrived, let's go for the ranking. Let's crazily throw in all the member clicks and recommendation ticket. This is the most crucial week of this book, I hope you will support me. The aunties do not need those tickets. Rather than adding flowers to a brocade, it would be better for us to help them in their hour of need. Today's update is the first one. Although De Shiyang kept a low profile, he was not someone who was afraid of trouble. In South Cloud State, the venerable De Shi family had to give face to the Shi men feudal lords. However, it did not mean that the other venerable families in the city could make him swallow his anger. Of course, in today's situation, peace was the most important thing. Although this triangle-eyed guy had spoken rudely, it would be disadvantageous if he were to lower himself to his level. He looked at the triangle-eyed guy for a moment and spoke. It doesn't matter who I am. Most importantly, I believe that peace is the most important thing. You and I are both from South Cloud State. If outsiders were to hear about our internal strife, I am afraid it would become a joke. If you feel that I am not qualified to be the mediator, you can ask the others here and see what everyone thinks about this matter. The triangle-eyed martial arts student laughed to the sky and snorted at De Shiyang. I thought you had eaten the guts of a leopard, but you are also a piece of trash. When you see that the situation is not going well, you want to bring out the public opinion to share the pressure. Kid, let me give you a word of advice. If you are timid, don't try to fight for justice. After he had finished speaking, he glanced around the square and said coldly, Everyone, that guy asked me to ask your opinion, who has something to say. Why don't you step out? He was pointing and gesticulating arrogantly. This attitude could intimidate people. Although the martial arts students from the other counties were dissatisfied with his arrogant attitude, in the end, no one stepped out. Some were expressionless and pretended that they had not heard him. Some showed discontent, but in the end they did not make a sound. And some showed a face of disdain. Apparently, they would rather offend a gentleman than a villain. Everyone could see that this triangle-eyed guy was the scourge of the city. Most likely, he was the tyrant of South Cloud State. If they were to lower themselves to his level, they would be at a disadvantage. After a while, he saw that no one responded. The triangular-eyed martial arts student could not help but feel proud. He waved the horsewhip a few times in the air, and glanced at De Shiyang with a mocking look. Everyone seems to have no opinion. This way, you are the only one that does not know what's good for you and talks too much. De Shiyang smiled lightly. I see that you also talk a lot. The triangular-eyed man glared and roared. I talk too much? That's right, this young master talks too much. In South Cloud State City, it's fine for this young master to talk too much. But if you country bumpkins from other counties talk too much, you'll be in big trouble. How big is it? The anger in De Shiyang's stomach gradually rose. The trouble was caused by Yun Qinyan. At this time, she would not stay out of it. She glanced at Qin Wushuang, but in her heart, she hoped that Qin Wushuang would stand up for her. She had also experienced Qin Wushuang's style. Under normal circumstances, he would keep a low profile. But being low-key didn't mean that he didn't have a tune. He had his own style, and the moment his style appeared, the other party would be in for a hard time. Qin Wushuang also felt helpless. Although in the past, Yun Qinyan did not give him a good impression. However, today, from beginning to end, she was completely innocent. From the current situation, it seemed that Yun Qinyan was not the only one who had fallen into the trap. De Shiyang had also fallen into the trap. Since everyone had traveled together, if Qin Wushuang deliberately stayed out of it, most likely the public opinion would not be good. How big? The triangular-eyed martial arts student rolled his eyes a few times and said with a sinister smile, If you don't want to leave South Cloud State City with missing arms and legs, the best way for you guys is to slap yourselves 10 times and admit that you have a dirty mouth in front of everyone. As soon as he said these words, the martial arts students from the other side of the city burst into another uproar. It was as if they were creating momentum for this triangular-eyed martial arts student. Usually, this group of martial arts students were lawless in South Cloud State City. They were used to wreaking havoc. Each of them was a master that desired to see the world in chaos. In this South Cloud State City, there was nothing they did not dare to do. To them, bullying a few foreign martial arts students was just a farce to relieve their boredom. De Shiyang had a good self-control. He still remained calm and did not reply. He only sneered and did not speak. When the triangular-eyed martial arts student saw De Shiyang's stubbornness, he was worried that he could not find an excuse to flare up. He shouted angrily, What? It seems you are not willing? Yun Qinyan raised her head and shouted, You want us to humiliate ourselves, you should give up. If you have the skills, perform well in this exam and fight for South Cloud State. What kind of skill is it to show off your power and anger here? Now, the triangular-eyed martial arts student was staring at De Shiyang. He ignored Yun Qinyan's scolding and said impatiently, You little girl, I don't have time to care about you. That one who is fighting for justice, could it be that you only have the ability to rely on women to support you? De Shiyang took a step forward and slowly said, What are you going to do? Could it be you want to eat me because you have more people? The triangular-eyed martial arts student laughed nastily. Yes, I have more people, what about it? Kid, just accept your fate. With a whistling sound, he was about to rush over. Suddenly, Qin Wushuang walked to the front and glanced at the triangular-eyed martial arts student with disdain. He ignored him and said loudly, Are there any martial arts students from the Shi-Men feudal lords here? Others might not know that he was Qin Wushuang, but how could the people of the Shi-Men feudal lords not know? If a disciple of the Shi-Men feudal lords was here, he must be the leader of this group. It would be best if they could retreat and solve the dispute. If not, then he could only use this triangular-eyed martial arts student as a weapon. The triangular-eyed martial arts student was interrupted. When he saw someone had stood out, he shouted, "Kid, who are you to yell here? No one from the Shi-Men feudal lords is here, right?" Qin Wuxuang raised his voice and asked again. The triangular-eyed martial arts student's words had been ignored by Qin Wuxuang. His anger increased greatly as he swore. "What? You want to use the feudal lords to get close? With your shabby clothes, a disciple of the wealthy class, do you want to get close?" Qin Wuxuang frowned slightly and asked with a somewhat annoyed tone, "A moment ago, you were the one who used a stone as a hidden weapon to hit my friend's horse, right?" The triangular-eyed martial arts student laughed arrogantly. He waved the horsewhip in the air and made a cracking sound. "It's your young master Hong, what about it? Do you also want to fight for justice?" "Fight for justice." Qin Wuxuang sized him up and down a few times and could not help but laugh. "Do you think you are good enough with this little bit of material? To fight for justice, at least you must have something to fight for. You are nothing more than a flea. I can pinch a few of you to death. Where is the injustice? Why would I need to hug you? Aren't you overestimating yourself too much by saying these words?" Qin Wuxuang's personality was like this. He would give the other party a taste of their own medicine. "You are mean, your mouth is mean, and your words are vicious. I am even more mean and vicious than you. Using your best face-slapping method, I'll slap you in the face." He would completely trample the other party's self-esteem and arrogance into the ground. Only this way, he would teach this bastard a lesson. Indeed, as soon as he said these words, that group of martial arts students from South Cloud State City instantly boiled up. Boos rose from all directions and clamored. Some were inciting, some were heckling, and some were encouraging. All in all, these words were stirring up the mood of that triangular-eyed, and adding fuel to the fire. "Kid, you will pay the price for your words." That triangular-eyed narrowed his eyes into a line, and a wave of murderous intent swam from his eyes. "Price." Qin Wuxuang laughed even more happily. "If I were you, I would go and reflect on it. If you have the skills, you should use them in the martial arts student exam. Is it glorious to be a tyrant here? Even if you don't feel ashamed, we do." "Humph, if you want to be a tyrant, you must have the ability to do so. If you don't have the skills, you will get bullied no matter at home or outside. As a weakling, you should have such awareness. Here, I will teach you guys a lesson and sharpen your skills. Just in case you guys get bullied outside of South Cloud State and lose the face of South Cloud State." That triangularide's words were full of righteousness, as if he was explaining his courage and his sense of responsibility. Inwardly, Qin Wuxuang gave a long sigh when he heard these words. In these years, he lacked everything except for this kind of idiot who used his power to bully others. Was this sense of superiority really contagious? That triangular-eyed martial arts student saw Qin Wuxuang's carefree expression and that he was not even looking at him. This kind of negligible lethality instantly caused all of his rage points to soar to the top in an instant. He raised the horsewhip in his hand again, squeezed his legs and urged the horse to rush over. He waved the horsewhip and apparently, he planned to use the momentum of the charging horse to whip Qin Wuxuang. At this moment, Qin Wuxuang's arm shook lightly in a way that no one could see clearly. He exerted strength from his wrist, and a tiny stone fragment spurted out. With a speed that no one could see with their naked eyes, it hit the horse's eye with a puff. Suddenly, the horse was attacked. It stood upright and staggered. How could that triangular-eyed martial arts student on the horse expect that his own horse would suddenly stumble? His body tilted and fell backward. Qin Wuxuang moved his wrist and sent out another attack. This attack directly hit the acupoint on the triangular-eye's waist. When the acupoint was sealed, the triangular-eyed wanted to use the power from his waist to roll in the air. However, when he thought about it, he realized that he could not control his movement. His waist went soft and with a loud plop sound, he fell to the ground. Karma in this life came quickly. The moment when the triangular-eyed martial arts student fell to the ground, regardless of the martial arts students from the other counties or his friends from the city, each of them drew in a breath of cold air. Inwardly, they all had the same thought. Yun Qinyan was the first to react. She was too familiar with this method and this style. It was Qin Wushuang's style. Although it appeared to be casual, in fact, it was a series of sneak attacks. He had beaten the other party until they did not even know where the problem was. Thinking back to the time when she had dealt with Qin Wushuang, Yun Qinyan had almost always stood on the opposite side of Qin Wushuang. And now, when she looked at that triangular-eyed martial arts student's sorry state, it was the first time that Yun Qinyan was on the same side as Qin Wushuang. Since they stood on different sides, naturally they had experienced different feelings. For the first time, Yun Qinyan felt waves of pleasure from Qin Wushuang's performance. When she looked at Qin Wushuang, he seemed much more pleasing to the eye than before. Chapter 75. The second update is here. I am still third on the click-through list, and just got beaten. I tried to push it but got beaten. I'm in tears. I am even behind on the recommendation list. Brothers, on account of the fact that I woke up early to write explosively, give me a hand. Let's rush to the top. The triangle-eyed martial arts student climbed up from the ground awkwardly and walked up to Qin Wushuang with a face full of grievances. Did you sneak attack me? Not only did he not understand this question, even those martial arts students on the side did not see how Qin Wushuang had made his move. They even suspected that it was Qin Wushuang who had made the move. After all, Qin Wushuang's movements were too small. And to these martial arts students, his speed was too fast. Besides, all his hand movements were hidden inside his sleeves. Only the subtle movements of his wrist were covered by the sleeves. Of course, with the strength of these martial arts students, they could not understand it. Sneak attack? Isn't this the old trick you used to deal with, my friend? Now, should I also warn you to clean your mouth and speak less? The triangle-eyed martial arts student felt a chill down his spine. He looked at Qin Wushuang with an alert expression. It turned out that the person in front of him was purposely going against him. The others looked at Qin Wushuang with a face full of astonishment. No matter how they looked at it, they felt it was strange. This person appeared to be around the same age as everyone. From his dressing, he was not an upper-class aristocrat. Seeing that he only had 3 people with him, he should have come from one of the more backward counties in South Cloud State. However, such a nameless and seemingly harmless person of the same age had caused a martial arts student from the city to suffer a great loss without batting an eyelid. A moment ago, everyone had seen how arrogant the triangle-eyed and his group of martial arts students were. In fact, everyone held the mentality of, it's better to avoid trouble, and did not want to get into trouble. After all, they had left their hometown. In other people's territory, the strong dragon could not suppress the local snake. However, if they did not want to be the strong dragon, someone else would. Thus, when Qin Wushuang stepped out, he immediately attracted the attention of martial arts students from all counties. Since someone had stepped out, the blood of these martial arts students had been ignited. The triangle-eyed martial arts student nodded and said with hatred, "You will regret it, you will regret it." To such meaningless threats, Qin Wushuang had always ignored them. However, this time, he had the unreasonable Missy Yun Qinyan next to him. When she saw the triangle-eyed martial arts student making a fool of himself, she felt extremely carefree. She put her hands on her waist and said like an old man, "Regret? Aren't you afraid of biting your tongue? Didn't you say that even if you want to bully in your own nest, you must have the ability to do so? Where is your ability? Could it be that falling to the ground in a dog-eat-dog posture is your trump card? There was a burst of laughter from the crowd, followed by thunderous applause. Apparently, those martial arts students shappy. They didn't dare to step forward, but someone did. The person who stepped out represented their thoughts and did what they did not dare to do. Of course, he had won their respect and their applause. Yun Qinyan had always been a crazy person. When she saw that people were gradually leaning toward her side, the public opinion and the public were all leaning toward one side, of course, she would not let go of the opportunity to beat a drowning dog. What do you mean you have no skills? You get bullied outside of your home. You will also lose face outside of South Cloud State. Now you should understand, right? In the end, who is losing face? A scum like you can only bully around your own nest. You can't even do anything. Once you get out of South Cloud State, you will only get beaten up. If you want to be beaten up, I would think that it would dirty my hands. On the face of the triangle-eyed martial arts student, there were patches of green and purple. His face flashed with a thick murderous intent. And those martial arts students from the city behind him, more or less, they all rushed over. Apparently, they all wanted to bully with numbers. When Yun Qinyan saw the situation, she shouted, "What are you guys doing? In broad daylight, could it be you want to bully with numbers?" The triangle-eyed martial arts student laughed nastily. "I am bullying you because you have fewer people. What are you going to do?" He made a gesture and those martial arts students from the city swarmed over. They surrounded Qin Wushuang and the other two in the middle. Each of them showed an unfriendly expression. Qin Wushuang acted as if nothing had happened. In his eyes, these martial arts students were not enough. It was just that he had some feelings. It was the same as his previous life. The local people's resistance to foreigners, the big city people's sense of superiority to people from small places, they were all so familiar. It was the same in his previous life and this life. However, after all, this was a martial arts world. After all, it was different than his former world. Just when they had fallen into the encirclement, someone from those martial arts students from the outer county shouted, "Don't bully with numbers." Hundreds responded to his call. Since the first one had stepped out, it would not be difficult for the second and the third. In this instant, the crowd's anger had been completely ignited. They were all furious. It was these people from the city who had gone too far. Now, they were in the wrong, yet they still wanted to bully others. These martial arts students were all people who had built their career through martial arts. Thus, they did not lack courage. All of them stood out and berated. "Bullying with numbers, it's a disgrace to the martial arts world." That's right, that's right. If there's a dispute, you can fight one-on-one. What kind of skill is it to bully others with numbers? That's right. Could it be the martial arts students from South Cloud City only have this much courage? Indeed, it's better to meet them in person than to hear about them. Although we came from a small place, we are not that shameless, right? Us martial arts students from the outer county will not allow them to bully others. Isn't it just a group fight? Who is scared of who? Today, us martial arts students from the outer 8 counties will compete with the martial arts students from the city. Rubbing their fists and palms together, they were filled with righteous indignation. The emotions of all the martial arts students from the outer county were ignited. Yun Qinyan felt extremely excited and said excitedly, "I told you, we are all young people with courage." There were almost 40 martial arts students from the outer 8 counties, and there were also 30 or 40 martial arts students from the city. In terms of numbers, both sides were on par. In terms of quality, those from the outer counties were all elite martial arts students from each county. And apparently, those from the city were all upper-level martial arts students. If they were to truly compete, most likely they would be on par. No one would gain the upper hand. Just when both sides were at daggers drawn, a wave of hurried horse hooves came from the main road outside the square. Next, someone shouted loudly, "What are you doing? What are you all doing?" When the martial arts students from the city heard this voice, all of them revealed a joyful expression and turned to look. There were 6 riders in total, all of them riding white horses. Especially the 3 people in the front, they had an elegant demeanor. Young Master Xing is here. Ha ha, young Master Yi and young Master Feng are also here. Those 6 riders were extremely tyrannical. They did not slow down even when they had charged to the front. From their stance, it seemed that they were going to rush over directly. Initially, the martial arts students from the outer county had been squeezed together. However, after this rush, they all scattered. This way, the 6 riders had easily charged into the core area and regrouped with that group of martial arts students from the city. Young Master Xing, you are finally here. If you had not come, these outer county martial arts students would have rebelled. Yes, this group of country bumpkins dared to look down on the dignity of our South Cloud City. Indeed, it's despicable. Young Master Xing, you are the most outstanding martial arts student in the city. You make the decision on how to blow the wind. The leading martial arts student wore a purple gold crown and a jade belt around his waist. Indeed, he was the young Master Xing that everyone was talking about. He was no more than 18 or 19 years old. That triangular-eyed went up to complain while he exaggerated his description. After young Master Xing had finished listening, he frowned slightly and sized that triangular-eyed martial arts student from head to toe. Then, he said lightly, "You are not exaggerating, right?" "No. Everyone can testify that it was this group of country bumpkins who started the fight first." That young Master Xing gave a light sneer as if he did not trust this triangular-eyed guy's character. He turned around, reined in his horse and cupped his fist in a salute. Then, he raised his voice. "Everyone, please control your emotions. Everyone is a part of the upper-level martial arts students in South Cloud State. This time, we have gathered together for the same goal and the same goal. If we were to start a group fight here, people from the other counties would laugh their heads off if the news got out." Although they did not know the background of this young Master Xing, his words were beautiful. The anger of the outer county martial arts students had also been alleviated. On the other hand, Qin Wushuang looked at him coldly. If he had guessed correctly, this martial arts student before him should be the descendant of the Shimen feudal lords. Since they were all martial arts students from the same county, Qin Wushuang would not believe that this matter would end like this. Indeed, that young Master Xing changed the topic. "Everyone has come from different counties. It's a good thing to be hot-blooded when you are outside. However, it's wrong to cause trouble with this hot-bloodedness. Thus, for the unity of the martial arts students in South Cloud State, the people who started the fight must be punished. Everyone, don't you think so?" Because of his beautiful words, the outer county martial arts students had lowered their guard. However, when they heard his next words, they felt that something was wrong. Those who were quick-witted had already smacked their lips and smacked their lip. He was loosening the reins only to grasp them better. That young Master Xing's gaze stopped on Yun Qinyan and said lightly, "You 3, which county are you from?" With an unfriendly tone, a good show was about to begin. Initially, Yun Qinyan thought that this person knew the big picture and was confused by his initial conversation. Later, when she listened to him, she realized that they were all in the same boat. She could not help but feel annoyed. Just when she was about to speak, Qin Wushuang suddenly waved his hand and sized young Master Xing up with a pair of cold eyes. Then, he asked with an indifferent tone, "If I've guessed correctly, you are an offspring of the Shimen feudal lords, right?" Inwardly, young Master Xing was moved as he said in a low voice, "What about it?" Qin Wushuang sneered and said leisurely, "Nothing much. By the way, we are from River County." As soon as he said the words River County, that young Master Xing's expression instantly froze. Instantly, the light that shot out from his eyes became completely different. Chapter 76. His reaction was not outside of Qin Wushuang's expectation. Even Yun Qinyan and De Shiyang were observing the reaction of this young Master Xing. Especially Yun Qinyan, she had also heard about the grudges between the Qin and the Shi Men feudal lord. When she saw the astonished reaction of the offspring of the Shi Men feudal lords, inwardly, Yun Qinyan felt extremely proud. She had participated in all the glory. This way, is your surname Qin? Or is it Dashi? That young Master Xing's tone had obviously become deep in thought as he probed. Unconsciously, a subtle signal had been revealed from his tone. He was afraid of the Qin. Or else, with the power structure of River County, he would have said the venerable De Shi family first, and then the Qin family. However, he had asked whether his surname was Qin or Dashi. This sequence of events was extremely subtle. My surname is Qin. Qin Wushuang answered lightly. Again, young Master Xing's expression froze, as if he had been bitten by a poisonous snake. The muscles on his face had clearly trembled. Indeed, his surname was Qin Wushuang. He had bumped into this name that had made Big Brother Shi Men Qian mad and the second head of the cold-blooded 13 Hawks. Most importantly to him, it was impossible to get off from the current situation. That triangle-eyed guy covered his waist and walked forward with a belly full of bitterness. He pointed at Qin Wushuang. Young Master Xing, it's this bastard that secretly plotted against us. Young Master Xing's real name was Simon Xing. He was full of anger as he slapped him with the back of his hand and scolded, I think you are the bastard. Not to mention triangle-eyed guy, even the other martial arts students from the city did not expect this sudden move. And those martial arts students from the outer counties were even more dumbstruck. They could not understand what this young Master Xing was doing. His attitude had changed so many times that no one could understand him. Could it be that the behavior of the offspring of the feudal lords was this confusing? At first, everyone thought that he wanted to make peace with them, and they all appreciated him. But then, he changed the topic, and it was obvious that he wanted to find trouble with the three of them. This made everyone's good impression of him instantly. Who would have thought that after a few words, he would slap his companion's face? This time, it was even more of a stroke of genius, completely making the onlookers lose their ability to reason. He could only sigh inwardly. The actions of an expert cannot be predicted with common sense. However, those who knew the inside story, such as Qin Wushuang and De Shiyang, only smiled and did not speak. The few people who came with Simon Xing also smiled bitterly and shook their heads. Of all the people he could provoke, he chose to provoke people from River County. It was one thing to provoke people from River County, but why did he provoke Qin Wushuang? Even if he had provoked Qin Wushuang, he shouldn't have been so tactless at this time. He actually opened his mouth and called him bastard. How could Simon Xing endure this? This triangle-eyed guy was so stupid, it would be strange if he did not ask for a slap. However, after this slap, the triangle-eyed martial arts student still did not understand the situation. He covered his burning cheek and with a face full of grievance, he mumbled, Young Master Xing, why did you hit me? Simon Xing said sternly with a sense of justice. Earlier, I heard that when you entered the city gate you urged your horse to run wildly, stepped on the passers-by, and even raised your whip to hit people. As a martial arts student from the city, don't you think that your actions have already lost the face of South Cloud State? Today, at the upper-level martial arts student gathering in South Cloud State, you are causing trouble here. You do not have any dignity as a host. This slap is to teach you a lesson. In the future, when you leave South Cloud State and lose face, it's not too much to kill you. The triangle-eyed martial arts student opened his mouth wide and his face was full of confusion. Since when did young Master Xing become the representative of justice? Allowing the horse to run wild and causing trouble, weren't these Simon Xing's specialty in the past? How come today, when it came to him, The crime was so serious. Although Yun Qinyan was insensitive, she could see that this Simon Xing was just putting on an act to find a way out for himself. Why was he looking for a way out? Without a doubt, Simon Xing was scared. He was scared of Qin Wushuang. The offspring of the feudal lords were scared of the offspring of the wealthy class in River County. This made Yun Qinyan, who was also an offspring of the wealthy class in River County, feel extremely comfortable. This was a living example of what it meant to change from arrogance to deference, and what it meant to have a 180-degree change in attitude. Fortunately, there were a few quick-witted martial arts students behind the triangle-eyed guy. They secretly dragged him to the back. This guy had a one-track mind. If he continued to pester him, young Master Xing would most likely want to kill him. Simon Xing remained calm and said with cupped fists, "Everyone, I am Simon Xing from the Shi-Men feudal lords. Today, I have gathered here for no other purpose. I only want one word, unity." What is the purpose of unity? It's for everyone to work together and fight for the honor of South Cloud State in this martial arts student exam. The better our result, the more honor South Cloud State will have. And the higher our ranking in Prince Akaji. Qin Wushuang did not know whether these words were insincere or not. However, at least, it was reasonable and he was not a total jerk. Regardless, these martial arts students shared the honor and disgrace of South Cloud State. If South Cloud State had a bad result and a low ranking, it would not bring them any benefit. On the contrary, it would bring them a lot of disadvantages. After all, in this world, everyone recognized the brand. What was the brand? Just like the universities in his former world, famous universities had their own style. Key universities had their own style. With different brands, they would receive different treatment. Wherever they went, the reputation they would receive would be completely different. Everyone, tell me, do my words make sense? Yes. Of course, the ones that answered him were those martial arts students from the city. They were all waiting to flatter Simon Xing. And for those martial arts students from the outer counties, they hesitated because they did not understand Simon Xing's style of doing things. At the moment, they did not express their opinions and only felt that this person's attitude had changed too quickly. Thus, they were not in a hurry to agree with him. Simon Xing did not mind and asked Qin Wushuang with a smile, "What do you think, am I right?" "You are right. Whether it's good or bad, it's all in your mouth. I only ask one thing, in this South Cloud State city, if someone deliberately tried to break the unity, what would you do?" Simon Xing said with a strong sense of righteousness, "Nothing to say, everyone will use all their strength to suppress them. As for the black sheep of the herd, I have always advocated for severe punishment." Yun Qinyan could not help but laugh as she said leisurely, "Only with these words from young Master Shi-Men did we dare to speak without worry. That friend of yours is not an ordinary tyrannical person. He did not even allow people to speak. When they spoke, he would break their legs. How tyrannical! Since it's his first offense, that slap will teach him a lesson. If he does it again, I will skin him myself." Simon Xing glared at them. "Listen up, from now on, we all represent the South Cloud State. We are all comrades standing on the same line. Whoever breaks the unity, I, Simon Xing, will not forgive them." Regardless of whether these words were true or not, they had gained a favorable impression. And among all the martial arts students at the scene, only Simon Xing was qualified to speak these words. After all, as the number one family in the South Cloud State and the only feudal lord family, he had the qualifications and the obligation to speak up. On the contrary, Qin Wushuang hoped that he was speaking the truth. After all, he was participating in the martial arts student exam. If he could save some trouble, why not? Although Simon Xing had spoken clearly, the estrangement caused by the previous confrontation could not be resolved. It had caused the martial arts students from the city and the other counties to be divided into two groups. After the disturbance from a moment ago, the martial arts students from the other counties had thrown away their previous restraint. They all gathered together and started to interact. And those from the city were still in the same circle. Although Simon Xing had tried his best to persuade them, there was a so-called saying of how a forcibly picked melon would not be sweet. Regardless of how he tried to mediate, the martial arts students from the other counties had always appeared out of place with those from the city. And for the martial arts students from the city, it was difficult for them to put down their arrogance. It was even more difficult for them to take the initiative to communicate with the martial arts students from the other counties. After all, this world did not have a developed communication system like his former world. It was hard to imagine that one phone call could reach the entire world. Even messenger pigeons had yet to form a mature system here. Thus, most of the martial arts students from the other counties were still unfamiliar with the name Qin Wushuang. Vaguely, they had heard of this name from a few counties that were close to River County. However, most of them had heard about the good show of the humble class challenging the wealthy class Su family. And Qin Wushuang had performed well in the competition. As for how Qin Wushuang had performed, they had no idea. As for the conflict with the Shimen feudal lords, the news had been deliberately blocked. The outside world had no way to know. Thus, these martial arts students from the other counties could not understand Simon Xing's change of attitude from arrogance to respect. They all guessed how demonic this Qin Wushuang was. Each of them came to greet him and tried to find out something from him. Qin Wushuang had only said a few words. Although Yun Qinyan was somewhat vain, she also understood the depth of the situation. She knew that it would be better to not mention the secrets of the feudal lords. Thus, when others asked about Qin Wushuang, she only mentioned the conflict between the wealthy class families in River County. She did not mention the Shimen feudal lords. While the interaction was lively, someone with sharp eyes yelled, "The prefect of the state has arrived." Among the state, the prefect was the highest-ranking official. He was in charge of all aspects of the state's administration, economy, and culture. This kind of prefect was chosen by the Zhen Wu holy place and held a high position. Usually, the local wealthy aristocrats would show him some respect. When they heard that the prefect had arrived, each of them stopped their discussion and looked over. Chapter 77. Under the escort of his personal guards, the prefectural magistrate rode a big horse to the center of the square. He was satisfied when he saw the gathering of martial arts students. "Ladies and gentlemen, this official has come here for 2 reasons. Firstly, to welcome you all. Secondly, to encourage you all so that you can move on. When you go to Prince Akaji, you are not only representing yourself and your family, but also your state and the future of our South Cloud state. To show my sincerity, for martial arts students from other counties, in the next 3 days in South Cloud State, you can stay at any inn. Food and lodging will be free, and the state will subsidize you." Those who had come to sign up for the exam, all of them came from aristocratic families. Normally, each of them could afford this little amount of food and lodging. However, the words from the prefectural magistrate meant more than just some food and lodging. It represented a form of importance and a treatment that only upper-level martial arts students could enjoy. Naturally, when the senior officer had arrived, there would be a round of scolding and encouragement. All the martial arts students nodded as they listened. Each of them felt that since the prefectural magistrate had placed so much importance on them, how could he not try his best? Finally, the prefectural magistrate had finished his scolding, and it was time for lunch. They were dismissed on the spot. As soon as they had announced the dismissal, martial arts students from each county invited their friends and started to group up. Qin Wushuang did not want to get involved. On this point, De Shiyang and he shared the same thoughts. Yun Qinyan liked the hustle and bustle. However, since she could not do anything alone, she could only obey the majority. After lunch, the 3 of them returned to their rooms and lived in peace. Suddenly, there came the sound of footsteps and a knock on the door. "Excuse me, is young Master Qin from River County here?" When he opened the door, a guy who looked like a servant stood outside. He asked with a smile with a respectful expression, "Are you young Master Qin?" "That's me, and you are?" "I am the butler of the Shi-Men feudal lords. Here is an invitation written by my patriarch. He asked me to bring it to you. He invites you to drink and watch the opera at my house. Let's get rid of the summer heat together." After he had finished, he handed over a beautifully wrapped invitation card respectfully. With an indifferent expression, Qin Wushuang did not even look at him, and said lightly, "Take it back." "Take it back?" That servant was stunned. "Yes, take it back. Young Master Qin, are you going or not? You have to take it and take a look, right?" Qin Wushuang turned around and asked, "Is it Patriarch Shimen who wants to see me?" "That's right, it's my clan lord's idea." "It can't be that I want to see Patriarch Shimen, right?" "No." The man was taken aback, but he still answered truthfully, "Since it's not me who wants to see him, it's him who wants to see me. Either he would come to visit me, or at least he would come to invite me personally. Just follow my instructions and reply to your clan lord." Qin Wushuang also didn't feel like talking to the servant. This Patriarch Shimen was playing with power. He sent a servant to invite Qin Wushuang. Clearly, he was deliberately lowering the status of Qin Wushuang. It would be strange if Qin Wushuang was willing to go. The servant stared blankly for a moment before retreating respectfully. "In that case, this lowly one will report back to the clan lord and ask for his instructions." In the mansion of the Shi-Men feudal lords, that servant quickly brought back Qin Wushuang's message. With his purple beard, Patriarch Shimen appeared to have an extraordinary temperament. 8 people stood next to him. The 4 on the left were his direct descendant. For the 4 on the right, 2 were the grand elders of the Shi-Men feudal lords, and the remaining 2 were the top fighters. They were the number 1 and number 2 of the cold-blooded 13 Eagles. Among the direct descendants, Shi-Men Qian was the oldest. His face was somewhat distorted as he said with hatred, "This kid still knows how to put on airs." Then, he turned around and said to Simon Xing behind him, "Third, today at the central square, this guy purposely showed off again, right?" Simon Xing smiled bitterly. "I couldn't tell if he was purposely showing off. However, this kid's aura is indeed strong." On the side, Shi-Men Yen complained, "Big brother, third brother, I am not interested in this Qin Wushuang. I only want to know, is that daughter of the wealthy class Qin family really close to the Shi-Men?" Simon Xing could not answer this question. However, Shi-Men Qian added fuel to the fire. "Aren't they close? They are a couple, they are simply disregarding the Shi-Men feudal lords." Shi-Men Qian's exaggerated words were meant to incite Shi-Men Yen. If he could incite Shi-Men Yen, he could influence his father's emotions. It was because his father had always spoiled his second sister. Indeed, Shi-Men Yen swung her father's arm. "Father, you and De Shiheng had personally agreed on this marriage. Now, the venerable De Shi family clearly wants to renege on the debt. What do you think we should do about this?" The patriarch of the Shi-Men feudal lords was named Shi-Men Yu. He had become famous at a young age and had joined the army early on. He had made many outstanding military achievements. During the family selection, he had defeated many heroes and obtained the right to inherit the patriarch position. After taking over the Shi-Men feudal lords for 24 years, he had made the Shi-Men feudal lords prosperous and promoted them to one of the 12 great feudal lords in the country. Of course, such an ambitious and ruthless person would not be affected by his children. After a moment of silence, he asked, 2 elders and 2 protectors, although this kid is young, he knows when to advance and when to retreat. He knew that when I sent someone to invite him, it was to checkmate him. He wanted me to go invite him personally and checkmate me. Do you think I should go see him? Or not?" Patriarch, please reconsider. He is just a newly promoted son of a wealthy family. Even if he had some fortuitous encounters, he is not qualified to put on airs in front of the Patriarch. If the Patriarch really wants to see him, you should send someone from the next generation to invite him. You are already giving enough face. I agree with the great elder. There is no precedent for the Patriarch of a feudal lord meeting a son of a wealthy family. If this were to spread out, I am afraid it would bring shame to our Shimen feudal lords. This was the great elder of the Shimen feudal lords. He was traditional and conservative in his thinking. He was stubborn and regarded family status very highly. The head of the cold-blooded 13 Eagles, the great protector, was a white-haired old man with a youthful complexion. He smiled and said, "Although this old man has never met with that Qin family's son, from the information that second brother gave me, this kid is worth meeting. Since you want to meet him, why do you care about family status?" In the Shimen feudal lords, the top 3 of the 13 cold-blooded Eagles had a very high status. They were on the same level as the Patriarch of the Shimen feudal lords. Thus, when this great protector spoke, he did not need to agree with the Patriarch. Instead, he was qualified to speak his mind. Initially, the second protector next to him had dealt with Qin Wushuang in River County. He had seen Qin Wushuang's methods. With his strength at stage 8 of the genuine force, he did not dare to say he would win. Thus, he had been very cautious in the feedback. When he heard the words of the great protector, he also nodded in agreement. Shimenyu stroked his long beard and said with a smile, "The 2 elders do not want to meet him, and the 2 protectors do not want to stick to one pattern. Each has their own reasons. This is difficult." Those 4 immediately said, "Everything will be decided by the Patriarch." "Decided by me?" Shimenyu repeated with a smile. "The Patriarch is the one who speaks for the Shimen feudal lords. Of course, we will not object." The 4 immediately expressed their stance. "Okay, if that's the case, then I will meet this son of the Qin family. I want to see how monstrous this son of the River County is." Shimen Qian and Shimen Yen were overjoyed when they heard that their father was going. Especially Shimen Yen, who cried out, "Father, teach that kid a lesson. You must let him know who is the authority in South Cloud State." Shimenyu only smiled and did not answer. Then, he walked out the door. Quietly, he arrived at the inn where Qin Wushuang was staying. Just as he turned around the corridor, he suddenly saw a young man standing in the middle of the courtyard. He was staring at the rockery and fountain in the courtyard with a focused expression. "Patriarch Shimen?" The young man spoke leisurely. Indeed, he was Qin Wushuang. Qin Wushuang. Inwardly, Shimenyu was surprised. Before he had turned around the corridor, he had not even noticed that someone was standing in the middle of the courtyard. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have believed that this son of the Qin family had trained to such a level. Clearly, he had reached the stage where his spirit and qi were in harmony. To put it simply, he had completely blended into the environment where he was standing. There was no self and no object. Man and nature had become a part of the scenery. For your information, Shimenyu was one of the few elite warriors in Prince Akaji. He was a powerful warrior at stage 9 of the genuine force. In Prince Akaji, the number of people who dared to say that they could defeat him could be counted on one's fingers. However, such an elite warrior had arrived without any warning. "I have been waiting for you for a while." Qin Wushuang spoke again. "You knew I was coming?" Shimenyu felt that he had fallen into a disadvantage in the first step. Now the other party had taken the initiative in the second and third step. "You will come for sure." Suddenly, Qin Wushuang smiled mysteriously. Like a swallow, he flipped his body in the air and shouted, "Follow me." As soon as he had finished speaking, he had already landed outside the courtyard wall. Chapter 78. Next to a bamboo forest, Qin Wushuang stopped his footstep. Patriarch Shimen, since you are here, don't hide. If you want to observe me, you can observe me face to face. Qin Wushuang laughed. Initially, Shimenyu wanted to keep him in suspense and show his face later. However, since Qin Wushuang had exposed him, he had to show himself. Inwardly, he was somewhat annoyed. Time and time again, he could not gain the upper hand from this young man. This was a situation he had never encountered before. Even if this young man had a mysterious fortuitous encounter, even if he had the strength of stage 8 of the genuine force, so what? He, Shimenyu, was the #1 person in South Cloud State, the patriarch of a feudal lord, and a stage 9 of the genuine force. Regardless of identity, family background, strength, or knowledge, he should have defeated the other party. However, the reality of the situation had caught him off guard. Shimenyu decided not to beat around the bush, and went straight to the point. Son of the Qin family, regarding the wealthy Su family's betrayal, there are many rumors that are slandering the Shimen feudal lords. According to my investigation, the origin of the rumors came from your Eastwood Qin family. Although Shimenyu only suspected this, he guessed that it should be the Qin family. Only, he could not provide any evidence. Thus, he acted as if it was true and attacked Qin Wushuang directly. A righteous person is not afraid of a crooked shadow. The Shimen feudal lords are a towering tree. How could a little wind and a small wave affect the Shimen feudal lords? Besides, I, a young man, would not believe such groundless rumors. How could I be so bored as to fabricate such rumors? Qin Wushuang had lived 2 lives and naturally, he could see through Shimenyu's trick. In a few words, he had removed the Qin family from the picture. Anyone can deny it. What evidence do you have to prove that this matter was not done by the Qin family? Qin Wushuang gave tit for tat. What evidence does Patriarch Shimen have to prove that it was done by the Qin family? If I may ask, could it be that Patriarch Shimen is guilty? Guilty of what? If you are not guilty, why would you care so much about some unknown rumors? Shimenyu was secretly startled, thinking that this youngster was indeed showing off his ability. At that moment, he smiled indifferently. My Shimen feudal lords are not afraid of rumors, but that doesn't mean that the Shimen feudal lords can tolerate rumors. Just like what you said, the Shimen feudal lords is a towering tree. They can't be indifferent to the offense of some short grass and shrubs, right? In the Bayou country, the aristocratic family, the hierarchy, these are the most important things. To elevate the Shimen feudal lords and belittle the wealthy Qin, Shimenyu's words had a double meaning. Unexpectedly, Qin Wushuang laughed involuntarily. Patriarch Shimen, do you look down on short grass and shrubs? Haven't you heard that even the fiercest wind can't break the strong grass? And a towering tree can't even withstand a single blow from the sawtooth. Sharp tongue. Shimenyu lightly reprimanded. Qin Wushuang didn't retort. He only said indifferently, Patriarch Shimen didn't look for me just for empty words, right? Shimenyu fixed his gaze on Qin Wushuang and tried to use his sharp gaze to thwart Qin Wushuang's momentum. Unexpectedly, Qin Wushuang was not afraid and looked at him calmly. After a while, Shimenyu finally opened his mouth. I heard that your sister is over 20 years old and has a beautiful appearance. I do have a lot of good resources. I want to help your sister with a marriage, how about it? Thank you for your concern, Patriarch Shimen. My sister already has someone she likes. Does Shiming? Finally, traces of anger could be heard from Shimenyu's tone. That's right. Lights flashed across Shimenyu's eyes and revealed a trace of murderous intent. He asked with a faster tone, Does Shiming and my daughter have a marriage contract? How could you not know? Qin Wushuang smiled lightly. This is what I wanted to say to Patriarch Shimen. Since ancient times, a forcefully picked melon is not sweet. Everyone knew what the so-called engagement was all about. De Shiming and my sister are in love, and he has no feelings for your daughter. Let me ask you, Patriarch Shimen, are you willing to enjoy this momentary pleasure, or do you want to ruin your daughter's life? Presumptuous, how do you want to ruin my daughter's life? When it comes to marriage, if you are not willing, I am not willing. Of course, it would be a lifetime of pain for her to marry the wrong man. Patriarch Shimen is a smart person, how could you not understand the meaning behind this? Shimen Yu's face gradually darkened. He slowly walked to the side of the bamboo forest and grabbed a bamboo as thick as a bowl with one hand. With his strength, that bamboo snapped in the middle and fell to the ground with a cracking sound. Son of the Qin family, one thought is good and the other is evil. If the venerable De Shi family and the Qin family remain stubborn, you might as well consider the fate of this bamboo. When Qin Wushuang saw Shimen Yu acting this way, he became even more calm. Patriarch Shimen had made a threat. What did it mean? It meant that he could no longer remain calm. Patriarch Shimen, have you heard of this saying? Jade can be broken, but its color will not change. Bamboo can be burned, but its joints will not be destroyed. You may have broken this bamboo, but each of its joints will not be destroyed. This is integrity. The bamboo's body is straight, and it would rather break than bend. This is temperament. Although the Qin clan lives in the countryside, we have always placed great importance on integrity. If Patriarch Shimen thinks that you can do whatever you want with a few threats, then you have made a mistake. Qin Wushuang did not speak with a sharp tone as he only said lightly, I have a suggestion, Patriarch Shimen, please listen to it. Shimen Yu forcefully suppressed his anger. Speak. Cancel the marriage between your daughter and De Shiming. Everyone will be at peace and forget the grudges with a smile. How about it? Shimen Yu sneered. To you, this suggestion is perfect. What benefits would it bring to the Shimen feudal lords? Canceling the marriage would damage the reputation of the Shimen feudal lord. Or else, the Shimen feudal lords can cancel the marriage in a high-profile manner. If Patriarch Shimen still feels unsatisfied, you can also ask the venerable De Shi family to publicly apologize and give material compensation. When it comes to reputation, it all depends on effort. What does Patriarch Shimen think? Ridiculous. Apparently, Shimen Yu was not interested in this suggestion. It's not ridiculous. Qin Wushuang shook his head seriously. Patriarch Shimen, you can think about it. If things did not develop in this direction, and the Qin family and the venerable De Shi family did not compromise, how would things develop? Showdown, Qin Wushuang had finally decided to lay his cards on the table. How would things develop? Son of the Qin family, do you think that the Shimen feudal lords do not have the power to destroy the Qin family and the venerable De Shi family? Or could it be that you still do not understand what it means to be a feudal lord family? Shimen Yu asked coldly. They are ranked 5th among the 12 great feudal lords. They have a stage 9 genuine force warrior and 3 or 4 stage 8 genuine force warriors. Not to mention in South Cloud State, even in the entire Prince Akaji, they are one of the top superfamilies. These are all common news and not new. Oh! Inwardly, Shimen Yu thought that it was good that he knew. He said in a low voice, if that's the case, what do you think the venerable De Shi family and the wealthy Qin family have to protect themselves? Qin Wushuang smiled and did not speak. He gently caressed the bamboo next to him and sighed. Patriarch Shimen, why do you think the wealthy Qin family must protect themselves? If we don't protect ourselves, are we just going to sit and wait for death? Ha ha ha, Patriarch Shimen is full of confidence. How about this, take one of my palms, how about it? Qin Wushuang's tone suddenly changed. Without any warning signs, Qin Wushuang did not even move his shoulder before he did it. However, as soon as he finished speaking, his body was already within 10 meters of Shimen Yu. Make a move? Shimen Yu twitched the corner of his mouth. Even if you are at stage 8 of the genuine force, you dare to make a move against a stage 9? Don't you know that the gap between stage 9 was the biggest gap among all the stages in the genuine force? You are seeking death. A thought flashed across Shimen Yu's mind. He slightly raised his arm and rubbed his hands together to form a hand seal. At this moment, Qin Wushuang's body suddenly stopped. With a smile hanging on his face, he said leisurely, "Seniors should take precedence. Let's let Patriarch Shimen make the first move." It would have been better if he had not done this action. As soon as he did, Shimen Yu became furious. Everyone who practiced martial arts knew this common sense. When fighting with an enemy, the biggest taboo was to be caught in a dilemma. If you suddenly stopped in the middle of an attack, it would leave behind a big flaw. As long as you were a martial artist, you would never make such a mistake. And who would actually do this? There were only two reasons. One was that you were half-baked, and the other was that you were looking down on and humiliating your opponent. Clearly, it was not that the son of the Qin family did not know this, but he did it on purpose. Since you are looking for death, then I will fulfill your wish. Shimen Yu was furious. He continuously formed hand seals, and his body suddenly moved. Waves of afterimages slashed across the sky. His speed was so fast that it was as if his entire body had suddenly disappeared into thin air. Push a book. The sword god Wutian, who once dominated the Soul Sword continent, had no choice but to self-destruct while being hunted down. Miraculously, he was reborn into the body of a young man. From then on, the Soul Sword continent lost the sword god Wutian, but gained a peerless expert, Hai Tian. Book ID equals 170-6101, book name equals The Rebirth of the Sword God. Chapter 79. The sixth update is here. It's really the sixth update. It's hard to imagine that there are actually 6 chapters. Although I didn't make it to the recommendation list, but I got 3,000 votes in one day, Li Tian was very satisfied. Although the click-through list was blown up by that group of strong people, this is their strength, I have nothing to say. My only request is, please support this book as always. During the promotion period, let this book go smoothly. Every time you log in, click, and vote, it's a fruitful day for me. If this small action can let the author get a little comfort after working hard, why don't you do it? Giving roses to people, the hand will have a lingering fragrance, right? If there was someone watching the battle from the side, at this time, his jaw would definitely drop. All of this came too strangely, too suddenly. Shimen Yu's figure, with the help of the void terrain, was so fast that he almost disappeared. And the energy gushing out from the handprints did not disappear because of the disappearance of the figure. On the contrary, Qin Wushuang only felt that there were countless butterflies shuttling back and forth in the void. These afterimages were obviously Shimen Yu's handprint. What a fast move, what a strong handprint. Since Qin Wushuang let Shimen Yu make the first move, naturally he had his own thoughts. To cope with the changes by remaining unchanged, he stood tall, with one palm in front of his chest. The light in his eyes shone brightly, as if he was catching something. In fact, at this level of speed, relying on vision was far from enough. Qin Wushuang could be said to be building one path in the open, but building another in the dark. His ears moved gently, what he really relied on was his hearing. At this level of confrontation, hearing was far more reliable than vision. No matter how strong you are, you can't suppress the attack to the point of silence. As long as there is sound, you can't be wrong by listening to the wind. Shimen Yu's speed was faster and faster, like a whirlwind, but also like a spinning top, quickly circling around Qin Wushuang, drawing circles. Every time he drew a circle, he waved out at least a dozen handprints. And these handprints, each palm avoided the main force, and did not really exert strength at all. In other words, he hit out palm prints, but the real lethality did not come out. But these hundreds and thousands of palm prints, if it was a slightly weaker opponent, How could they judge which handprint would hit the main force? Trying to drag me to death with speed? Qin Wushuang sneered inwardly. One must know that speed was Qin Wushuang's forte. If it was Qin Wushuang using the same attack, he wouldn't need to waste so much effort. He could just throw out a palm and beat all these fancy moves. Since that's the case, I'll play with you. With this thought, Qin Wushuang lifted his legs and began to spin. As a result, the scene became even stranger. Not only did one of them spin in a circle, both of them were spinning in a circle as well. From the looks of it, the two of them didn't look like experts at all. Instead, it looked more like they were playing a game of tag. However, in this competition of speed, both sides knew that there was a lot to learn about turning in circles. If he was just half a beat slower, what awaited him would be his opponent's attack. The two figures spun rapidly like spinning top. The dust on the ground was stirred up by their speed. Slowly, the yellow sand was stirred up and smoke and dust curled up. In the yellow sand, the two figures chased each other. It was impossible to tell who was chasing who. After spinning for who knows how many times, the more Shimin Yu spun, the more alarmed he became. Previously, when he spun around Qin Wushuang, it was just to test Qin Wushuang's patience and psychological quality. Therefore, he didn't really use his power. But at this moment, even if he wanted to use his power, he couldn't find the opportunity. They were both spinning in circles, but the two always maintained the same distance. They could attack, but they couldn't guarantee a successful attack. Shimin Yu wanted to shorten this distance, but sadly found that the initiative was not in his hands. The speed of Qin Wushuang's son was not below him at all. He even had to admit that perhaps, in terms of speed, this Qin Wushuang's son was above him. After all, to be able to maintain the same distance while spinning in circles at high speed, at least proved that the opponent could control his speed with ease. In other words, if the opponent wanted to slow down, he could also speed up. And if he slowed down, his momentum would weaken, and it was very likely that he would be attacked from both front and back. He wanted to speed up again, but he had already reached his speed limit. It seems that, in terms of pure speed, this Qin Wushuang's son is not weaker than me. Shimin Yu's thoughts turned quickly, using my strong points to attack the enemy's weak points. The Qin Wushuang's son is fast, but after all, he is still young. His inner strength cultivation is inevitably insufficient. This old man only needs to use one palm to break his muscles and bones, and his cultivation will disappear in the blink of an eye. Shimin Yu had been through hundreds of battles, and he was very confident in his own cultivation. He had never doubted his own strength. The 9th level of the true martial realm was forged after experiencing countless baptisms of blood and fire, countless massacres. Thinking of this, Shimin Yu suddenly let out a low whistle, and his body suddenly pulled away from the circle. Taking a step back, he didn't really want to retreat, but to better block the attack. Loosening the reins only to grasp them better, and widening the space so that he could launch a fatal attack. Haha, Patriarch Shimin, are you afraid? Qin Wushuang was unforgiving, and simply didn't allow Shimin Yu to retreat. He knew that Shimin Yu retreated not because he was afraid, but because he certainly had a more powerful killing move. However, Qin Wushuang had 2 lifetimes of experience, and he wasn't inferior to Shimin Yu in the slightest. With a glance, he understood the situation clearly. He knew that in this battle of speed, Shimin Yu couldn't remain calm. Since ancient times, regardless of whether it was the exchange of troops or the confrontation of individuals, it was all about a spurt of energy. With one breath, it was easy to soar to the Milky Way. If that breath was over, the momentum would inevitably decline, and it would be quite troublesome to brew a second burst of energy. In large strides, Qin Wushuang circulated the Sun Force genuine qi inside his body. Like a surging red sun, the Sun Force genuine qi was ready to make a move in the east. At any moment it would rush out of the clouds. His momentum suddenly surged, covering the sky and covering the earth. He's strong, but I'm stronger, and I'll soar to the flaming sun in one breath. All the dust, all the yellow sand, and all the fluttering bamboo leaves formed a huge whirlpool behind Qin Wushuang. In an instant, Qin Wushuang was like the incarnation of a Vajra, and his whole body was covered in layers of red light. The most powerful Yang, only my flaming sun. In an instant, Qin Wushuang's fighting spirit rushed to the peak. With a Vajra roar, he crossed his palms and rushed forward, pushing out a flat palm. There were no fancy moves and no superfluous movements. Grand, majestic, but simple and concise. Boom. The force that couldn't be dodged, and the indomitable force of the palm directly swallowed the entire space. Shimin Yu was already at a disadvantage in the battle of speed. If he continued to retreat, it was equivalent to selling his body to the opponent, and directly becoming the opponent's target. Under such circumstances, he had no other choice. This palm, he could only take it head-on. In that split second, Shimin Yu's mind was unexpectedly unable to calm down. Countless thoughts flashed through his mind, including the hesitation of achieving success in his youth, including the glory of his military life, including the prestige of becoming a clan lord in his life. He rarely had an opponent. And at this moment, an opponent that he couldn't help but pay 120% attention to had finally appeared. It was as if this palm was predetermined by fate, and also as if it was a predestined encounter. With this palm, there was no way out for both sides. He used all his strength and held nothing back. Boom! With a muffled groan, the two figures suddenly separated and swept to the side. On the ground where the two of them had been standing, a huge hole appeared. It was a hole big enough to bury 20 people. Around the hole, there were deep ravines that looked like they had been plowed in the fields. On the two sides of the hole, Shimin Yu and Qin Wushuang each stood on one side. Their expressions were incomparably cold, and they didn't relax at all. Obviously, they were also on guard against the opponent's second attack. But their moods were completely different. Especially Shimin Yu, whose heart was surging like a raging tide. He found it hard to believe that he didn't gain the slightest bit of advantage in that attack just now. One had to know that the attack just now happened in a flash, and there was no time for both sides to think. They both used all their strength in that attack. Both sides used their strongest power to attack each other, and the result was a dignified level 9 of the genuine martial realm. The lord of a great clan didn't gain the slightest bit of advantage. Don't look at his majestic and extraordinary bearing. In fact, that attack just now almost caused his internal organs to shift. The shock in his heart could be imagined. Qin Wushuang wasn't any better. He sighed in his heart. After all, he still underestimated a level 9 of the genuine martial realm. Even after using all his strength, he was only evenly matched. However, Qin Wushuang had always been swift and fierce. In his previous life, he was even called martial madman. On the path of martial arts, he often did crazy things. At this moment, he just came back to his senses. The corner of his mouth twitched, and he said provocatively, "Lord Shimin, this palm, it didn't taste good, right? You're not any better." Shimin Yu said gloomily. Until now, he finally put down all the so-called lord of a great clan's self-esteem, and really put Qin Wushuang in the list of opponents that could match him. In a battle between experts, wanting to retreat unscathed is a disrespect to the opponent. But I want to ask Lord Shimin, with my skills, if I were to disregard everything and become the enemy of the Shimin clan, would I be able to kill everyone in the Shimin clan except for you? These words were neither fast nor slow, but there was a hint of madness in them. No matter how calm Shimin Yu was, in the end, he couldn't maintain his composure. His face turned pale with fright, and the gaze he used to look at Qin Wushuang was no longer as condescending as before. Qidian Chinese website welcomes readers to read. The latest, fastest, and most popular series are all original works at Qidian. Chapter 80. Today there are 3 updates, one in the morning, one in the afternoon and one in the evening. Was everyone satisfied with yesterday's outburst? Haha, if you are, please continue to vote for this book. If Qin Wushuang had said these words before the battle, Shimin Yu would have taken it as a joke. It would go in his left ear and out his right ear like a cool breeze brushing past his ear. After a while, there would be no reaction. But in this battle, it was better than tens of thousands of words. It was more convincing than tens of thousands of words. In this martial world, everything depends on strength. Only strength was the unshakable truth. After this battle, Shimin Yu also experienced Qin Wushuang's craziness. He looked calm and collected and was quite shrewd. But once he exploded, it was like a volcano erupting. At the beginning of the Battle of Words, he had fully experienced Qin Wushuang's sharp words. He was good at grasping the loopholes in every word, and quickly responded. But who would have thought that when he fought, Qin Wushuang was also not careless. He was even crazier than when he was fighting. Especially in the battle just now, Shimin Yu clearly felt Qin Wushuang's brazen fighting style. That kind of indomitable momentum, the courage and determination to fight for survival in the face of death, were the most valuable qualities of a strong person. An opponent who was both calm and crazy was the most terrifying. Like a volcano, when it was not erupting, it was peaceful and calm. But once it erupted, it completely revealed its crazy side, with a temperament that destroyed everything. This kind of temperament that did not hesitate to destroy jade and common stone made Shimin Yu have no choice but to treat it seriously. He carefully chewed on Qin Wushuang's words. He did not doubt at all whether the young man in front of him had the courage. Although the Shimin family was the #1 family in South Cloud State, but it was not invulnerable. The older Shimin Yu was, the older the ginger, and the more he understood the ways of the world. Naturally, he would consider things more comprehensively and steadily. These years, he did not have the swift and decisive straightforwardness that he had when he was young. Instead, he was more tactful and smooth in all aspects. The affairs of the world were unpredictable. Misfortunes and blessings could happen overnight. Many times, disasters were inadvertently caused by disasters. The current situation made him have no choice but to weigh this question. The crux of the problem was whether it was worth it to make an enemy out of such a flourishing and unstoppable young man. What kind of consequences would the Shi-Men feudal lords have to bear for making such a person their enemy? No matter how he changed his train of thought or how he deduced, he was unable to deduce an answer that satisfied him. To his dismay, he discovered that, in front of this young man's threat, the glorious Shi-Men feudal lords had no way to deal with him. Pursuit? The cold-blooded 13 Eagles were elites, but even the great leader of the cold-blooded 13 Eagles was still inferior to Shimin Yu. If even a clan lord like him couldn't gain any benefits, the 13 Eagles would only be throwing their lives away in vain. The most frightening thing was that once this young man made up his mind to become enemies with the Shi-Men feudal lords, he would use all kinds of sinister methods, such as sniping, assassinating, or using poison. His various methods were indeed impossible to guard against. The Shi-Men feudal lords had a big business and a big reputation. Therefore, they had a big target. Facing such a terrifying opponent, hiding was definitely out of the question. Once the other party did not play by the rules, the consequences were indeed very serious. Kill the entire Shi-Men feudal lords. Although these words made Shimin Yu feel uncomfortable, it was a possibility that he had to face. Patriarch Shimin, whether we are friends or foes, you can make the decision. Qin Wushuang had observed Shimin Yu's words and body language. In fact, he had already seen through Shimin Yu's inner conflict. He had reminded him to break Shimin Yu's last trace of hope and let him see the situation clearly. Shimin Yu gave a long sigh and asked dispiritedly, "Right now, I only have one question. Please ask, Patriarch." "I don't dare to ask, who is your teacher? Have you already received the spiritual affinity? Shimen Yu could only think in this direction. Or else, as an offspring of the humble class, it was impossible for him to rise so quickly in just a few short years. His speed was as fast as lightning. With the foundation of the Qin family, even if they had been a wealthy class 100 years ago, they could not have produced such a demonic talent. The only explanation was that Qin Wushuang had another fortuitous opportunity. And this fortuitous opportunity was most likely what everyone in the Baiyu country dreamed of, receiving the spiritual affinity. When he thought here, a trace of jealousy flashed across Shimen Yu's heart. How many people could only hope for their entire life and never receive the slightest bit of spiritual affinity? As for this son of the Qin clan, he had no status, and no talent. He had never heard of any monstrous talent. On what basis did he have such good luck fall on his head? However, no matter how unbalanced he felt, he had to accept this reality. Spiritual affinity was such a miraculous thing. In the world of the secular martial artists, even if you had reached the peak of stage 9 of the genuine force, you might not receive a spiritual affinity. And some genuine force warriors who were only at stage 3 or 4 had received the spiritual affinity because of their fate. Overall, to the spiritual affinity, strength would affect it. However, it was never a decisive factor. To put it in a superstitious way, it could be a predestined fate. When he saw Qin Wushuang only smiled and did not answer, Shimen Yu was even more convinced of his guess. The spiritual realm existed within the Tianxian land. However, it was outside of the Tianxian land. Basically, elite warriors at the spiritual martial force rarely participated in the secular conflict. At least, in a subordinate country like the Baiyu country, it would be difficult for one spiritual martial force to appear in 100 years. Even if there were such seedlings, they would be taken away by the mother country and would never be able to return to their homeland. Even if they did become a spiritual martial force warrior, at most, they could only bring honor to their ancestors and raise the status of their family. They would never return to their family to serve. Thus, elite warriors of the spiritual martial force were always mysterious. Qin Wushuang's refusal to reveal the truth was also in line with the characteristics of elite warriors of the spiritual realm. This made Shimen Yu even more convinced that Qin Wushuang's teacher must be related to elite warriors of the spiritual martial force. When he thought here, all of Shimen Yu's hesitation disappeared without a trace. Before the background of an elite warrior of the spiritual martial force, not to mention the Shimen feudal lords, even if it was the Zhen Wu holy place in the Baiyu country, as long as the elite warrior of the spiritual martial force wanted to, they could turn the entire Zhen Wu holy place into ashes with a flick of their finger. After a long sigh, Shimen Yu said with a bleak tone, "Dissolve, the engagement between the Shimen feudal lords and the venerable De Shi family is dissolved." Then he added, however, "Everything must be done according to little brother Qin's train of thought. The Shimen feudal lords will propose to dissolve the engagement. Then, the venerable De Shi family will publicly apologize and give a symbolic compensation." How much compensation? Symbolic compensation? How could the Shimen feudal lords ask for such an exorbitant price? Shimen Yu smiled bitterly. "Little brother Qin, you have destroyed the face of the Shimen feudal lords." Qin Wushuang shook his head and said, "Why do you say this, Patriarch Shimen? For this matter, both sides will benefit from solving it this way. Indeed, it's the most ideal ending. At least, the Qin and the Shimen feudal lords will not be enemies for generations. Isn't this a matter that concerns the rise and fall of the family?" Shimen Yu could only comfort himself like this. At the same time, he made up his mind. For generations, the Shimen feudal lords would never be enemies with the Qin. Little brother Qin, as the saying goes, heroes come from the youth. Tonight, I will host a banquet and invite all the martial arts students from South Cloud State to participate in the exam. Please come. Since he had decided to mend the relationship with the Qin, he would take a step back. Shi Menyu was a cunning old fox. Of course, he would not let go of the principle of maximizing benefit. If he could form an alliance with the Qin, it would be a blessing in disguise for the future development of the Shimen feudal lords. Compared to the background of the spiritual realm, the Shimen feudal lords temporarily gave up this little thing and made this little concession. What did it count as? If their daughter did not marry to Shiyang, would they worry about not being able to get married? As long as the Shimen feudal lords were willing to speak, how many of those venerable children in South Cloud State would not sharpen their heads and try to climb up? I must use this opportunity to mend the relationship with the Qin and strengthen the relationship between the two families. Inwardly, Shimen Yu had made up his mind. Qidian website welcomes all readers to read. The newest, fastest, and most popular works are all at Qidian. Chapter 81. Second update. There is one more update tonight. Little brother Qin, this time, you will not refuse my invitation, right? Shi Menyu said with a smile. As long as your young master does not get angry with me, I would also like to experience how luxurious a feudal lord family is, haha. Hearing Qin Wushuang's mocking tone, Shi Menyu was overjoyed inwardly. It was apparent that the Qin son's hostility toward the Shi Men feudal lords had been lifted. Immediately, he took advantage of the situation and said with a smile, "Then I will wait for you at the mansion." Sure. Suddenly, Qin Wushuang's ears twitched. We made too much noise, someone is coming. The old and the young looked at each other and smiled. With a mutual understanding, both of their figures swept away into the bamboo forest and disappeared in a flash. For this battle, both parties did not want to expose themselves. Shi Menyu was at stage 9 of the genuine force. Of course, he did not want to leak out the fact that he could not win against a young martial arts student. And since Qin Wushuang had reached a temporary truce with Shi Menyu, of course, he did not want to leak the details of this battle. After all, for a 16 or 17-year-old martial arts student, his strength was too monstrous and too ostentatious. The commotion caused by this battle was huge. Especially the aura from the battle between the elite warriors, it continued to spread out. Although these two had chosen a remote place, in the end, it still attracted some busybodies. This bamboo forest was quiet amidst the chaos, and there were many inns around it. And inside the inns, martial arts students from different counties in South Cloud State were staying. Each of them heard the sound and rushed over. Look there! Damn, what is going on? Is it a sinkhole? Nonsense, how could the ground sink so neatly? And there are still traces of the battle between the elite warriors in these gullies. Such rich masculine chi, it was definitely a battle between elite warriors. In a moment, people had gathered next to the giant pit. Surprisingly, De Shiyang and Yun Qinyan were among them. From their expression, one could see the shock inside their hearts. The sound of discussion continued. Those martial arts students who knew each other even whispered to each other and exchanged their experiences. The giant pit could almost bury dozens of people. Next to the pit, circles of gullies were knee-deep. They could see the shock in each other's eyes. This was an incomparably shocking destructive power. According to the common sense of martial arts students, a battle that could cause such destructive power should be a battle between upper-level warriors of the genuine force. This must be a battle between elite warriors at stage 7 of the genuine force. One martial arts student said excitedly. Unfortunately, we were a step too late. If we can see a battle between high-tier true martial realm experts, it will surely be beneficial to our cultivation, right? Young Master Yang, didn't Qin Wushuang come out with you? Yun Qinyan, who had joined in the fun for a while, came over and asked when she didn't see Qin Wushuang. De Shiyang lightly shook his head and frowned slightly. He carefully observed that giant hole. From time to time, he would walk to the deep ravine and rummage through it. What are you looking at? Yun Qinyan was curious. This gully was created by foot power. De Shiyang said in a low voice, with such strength, I am afraid it's not as simple as stage 7 of the genuine force. How do you know? Yun Qinyan was even more confused. De Shiyang smiled lightly and did not answer. Stage 7 of the genuine force. His father, De Shiheng, was at stage 7 of the genuine force. De Shiyang knew his father's strength very well. Perhaps it was possible to use foot power to step into this gully. However, this gully was clearly left behind by a battle. In other words, the person who had done this had not done it deliberately. Instead, it was a natural force that had plowed the ground into such a deep gully. Strong, not just a normal level of strength. Brother Dashi, according to your estimation, what kind of terrifying power did these two elite warriors have? An outer county martial arts student came over and probed. Unfathomable. De Shiyang could only give these 4 words. Unfathomable? Each of the Wudong students on the side was shocked. Someone mumbled, could it be stage 9 of the genuine force? Stage 9? Impossible. How is it impossible? In our South Cloud state, there is only one stage 9 of the genuine force, and that is Patriarch Shimen. He couldn't possibly be the only one who could create a doppelganger to fight against him, right? Haha. Oh, that's right. This speculation was logical. After all, in South Cloud State, the Shimen feudal lords stood out like a crane among a flock of chickens. Only the Shimen feudal lords had stage 9 genuine martial realm martial artists. In other families, stage 8 of the genuine force were rare. For your information, theoretically, stage 8 of the genuine force was qualified to compete for the feudal lord's position. So, this should be a duel between stage 8 true martial realm warriors. So powerful. When I can reach this level, I would be willing to give up 10 years of my life. 10 years? I would rather exchange 20 years for it. The martial arts students sighed with emotion and spoke with an extremely envious tone. In this martial arts world, no one was exempt from the worship of the strong and the yearning for power. They discussed, sighed with emotion, and envied De Shiyang lingered for a while. Since he could not find any more clues, he turned around and went back. When Yun Qinyan saw De Shiyang returning to the inn, she did not want to stay alone and followed him. Qin Wushuang returned to the inn and sat down cross-legged. He breathed in and out to calm his rolling blood. In his previous life, he had died from the backlash of his genuine qi. After reincarnating, of course, he would not suffer again. One should not fall on the same path twice. Patriarch Shimen is indeed a stage 9 of the genuine force. Fortunately, my Sun Force is extremely powerful. If it were not so, I am afraid I would have suffered a little today. Nice, I finally witnessed the true power of a stage 9 of the genuine force. But I wonder, what level is this Patriarch Shimen at stage 9? Since they were all at stage 9 of the genuine force, there would be differences in their levels and strength. Today, he had verified it with Patriarch Shimen and gained a lot of confidence. At least, he could contend with a stage 9 of the genuine force. Although his Sun Force had reached the perfect stage, it was still lacking. He needed time to practice it. Most importantly, he did not use the ultimate move of the 9 Suns Palms. 9 Suns destroy the world. In other words, he did not use his trump card. Or else, Patriarch Shimen would have suffered a little. After finishing his breathing, he was about to get off the bed when someone knocked on the door. When he opened the door, it was De Shiyang and Yun Qinyan. Qin Wushuang was not surprised. Qin Wushuang, why are you closing the door in the middle of the day? It's so lively outside, why don't you go take a look? Yun Qinyan yelled loudly. What's so lively? Qin Wushuang asked, even though he already knew the answer. The super strong warriors collided and created a big pit. There are also many ravines. It's so exciting. Everyone thinks that this should be a peak battle between Stage 8 warriors of the genuine force. Yun Qinyan described the situation with great delight. Stage 8 of the genuine force? Inwardly, Qin Wushuang smiled bitterly. If one party was a Stage 8 warrior, then most likely, a corpse would have been left at the scene of that battle. When a Stage 8 warrior met a Stage 9 warrior, it would be a dead end. Too bad I did not make it to such a battle. Yun Qinyan sighed with emotion. What's there to be sorry about? It might not have been a good thing to make it. De Shiyang suddenly walked over and glanced at Qin Wushuang. He smiled and asked, Wushuang, you have been staying in your room? Yes. Qin Wushuang answered honestly. I heard a moment ago that it was very lively outside. So this had happened. De Shiyang smiled again and did not say anything else. At this moment, the corridor boiled over. A martial arts student yelled, Big news, big news. Tonight, the Shimen feudal lords are hosting a banquet and inviting all martial arts students from South Cloud State to participate in the exam. Everyone, do you want to go or not? As soon as this news was announced in the inn, it immediately caused a huge uproar. Those martial arts students who had already returned to their rooms swarmed out again. Chapter 82. Third update. Continue to ask for recommendation ticket. Tomorrow, the third update will continue. Tomorrow, the martial arts student exam will begin. The plot will be even more intense, and the main storyline has already begun. Let's wait and see. At the mansion of the Shimen feudal lords, the servants had already started to get busy. The patriarch had ordered them to prepare tonight's banquet with the proper standards and dignity of a feudal lord. Shimen Yu knew clearly that on the surface, it was a banquet for all the participating martial arts students. In fact, there was only one main character, and that was Qin Wushuang. This was a name that made him feel complicated. However, he had to think deeply about it. Shimen Yu's actions made everyone in the Shimen feudal lords confused. Shimen Qian and Shimen Yan were especially confused. They almost suspected that something had gone wrong with their ears. As for the two grand elders and the two heads of the guardians, they were old men after all, so they didn't express their doubts. Father, did you make a mistake? We are the Shimen feudal lords, the #1 family in South Cloud State. All of us are upper-class aristocrats. Today, could it be that we are letting those so-called aristocratic children from the countryside come to our Shimen feudal lords? Shimen Qian had many strengths and weaknesses. His biggest weakness was that he was narrow-minded and stuck to the idea of social status. Shimen Yan even pouted. Father, didn't you go to find that son of the Qin family? Did you help me teach him a lesson? The complexion of Shimen Yu sunk, and waving his hand, he made his 3 children gather together, then with a solemn expression, he said with incomparably solemn tone, You all listen well, my next words are not a joke, you all must firmly remember them in your heart. You must not forget them at all times. Father, please instruct us. When the 3 siblings saw their father being so serious, they immediately bowed and answered. Yen your marriage with De Shiming will be cancelled immediately. Pick a day and ask the second guardian to accompany you to River County. Take the initiative to break off the engagement, and do not hesitate. Cancel the marriage? Shimen Yen felt as if her chest had been hit hard. Cancel? Shimen Yu's tone was filled with unquestionable determination. Shimen Yen cried out with grievance. Why? Father, why should we cancel it? Among all the venerable children in South Cloud State, I only like De Shiming. I don't like the others. Isn't it just a daughter of the Qin family who is being intimate with him? It would be better to send a protector to secretly kill her. Father! How dare you? Shimen Yu shouted in a low voice, his face sunk. Annulling the engagement, this is my idea. Don't say any more, otherwise I will punish you according to the family rules. Qian Xing especially Qian listen up. I don't care what grudges you have with Qin Wushuang in the past. From today onwards, these grudges must become a thing of the past. Even if it was in his heart, he would not allow any grudges to exist. I don't care if you can digest it or not. Even if you can't digest it, you have to forcefully digest it. Whoever can't do it will be punished by the family law. Shimin Qian was dumbfounded and looked at Shimin Yu in surprise. Was this still his father? His father, who had always been protective of his children, had completely changed today. This was the first time that Simon Xing and Qin Wushuang had met, so it was nothing much. Moreover, he was more tactful than his elder brother Shimin Qian. Hearing his father's order, he could only agree. Father, can you tell me why? Shimin Qian sat heavily on the chair. His face was somewhat distorted. It was very difficult for him to calm down. Didn't his father's order mean that he was compromising with the Qin family? A feudal lord family was compromising with a new wealthy class. What kind of logic was this? At this time, the head guardian of the cold-blooded 13 Eagles suddenly spoke. Patriarch, did you fight with that son of the Qin family? If possible, Shimin Yu naturally did not want anyone to know about the battle with Qin Wushuang. Fortunately, there were no outsiders. Even the core elders of the family did not participate in the conversation. There were only 2 grand elders and 2 head guardians. These were all his trusted aides. Naturally, he did not need to hide it. Nodding, Shimin Yu sighed. We fought. This son of the Qin family is much more difficult to deal with than we had imagined. After saying these words, Shimin Yu also felt rather dispirited and deeply felt a sense of helplessness. Suddenly, the head guardian's youthful face tightened and he lost his voice. Could it be that the son of the Qin family could escape unscathed from the patriarch's hands? As soon as he said these words, even Shimin Qian, who had been sulking, could not help but tremble. He suddenly sat up from the chair and looked at Shimin Yu suspiciously. The 2 grand elders of the family also revealed an astonished expression and waited for Shimin Yu's answer. Shimin Yu sighed. It's not as simple as escaping unscathed. If we were to fight head-on, I would not have the slightest confidence to win against him. Boom. Shimin Qian sat down with his butt. He used too much strength and directly collapsed the chair. If he did not have a high level of training and used his calves to support his center of gravity, he would have fallen into an embarrassing state. Shimin Yu showed an unhappy expression and snorted. Impatient, you are not reliable. I want to see how old you will be before you can truly become steady. Don't think that just because you have the title of number 1 in the younger generation in South Cloud State, you don't know the north, south, east, and west. What number 1? That's because people are flattering the Shimin feudal lords. Do you think you can win the title of number 1 just by relying on yourself? Shimin Qian was speechless and felt extremely ashamed. You are punished to go to the 10,000 feet mountain and meditate for half a year. If you still don't understand this, you will be punished for another half a year. When Shimin Yu was truly angry, he still had a lot of prestige. Not to mention Shimin Qian, even the Grand Elder and the Head Guardian did not dare to speak out to persuade him. Shimin Qian could only obediently and tactfully say, Yes, I will go now. Immediately, Shimin Yu glared. Without looking back, Shimin Qian covered his face and left with shame. Xing Er, in this martial arts student exam, you must keep a low profile and pay more attention to your actions. You must not steal the limelight from that son of the Qin family, and you must not offend him. When it's necessary, you can befriend him without leaving any traces. Tonight's banquet is just the beginning. Do you understand? Simon Xing's advantage was that he was flexible and flexible. When he thought about his father's evaluation of Qin Wushuang and his terrifying strength, Simon Xing asked himself honestly and indeed, he did not have any capital to compete with him. Yes, father. Shimin Yu nodded and looked around. Then, he said to those 4 elite warriors, 2 grand elders and 2 guardians. Do you think I am making a big fuss over nothing? No, no. The head guardian smiled while stroking his beard. I don't know what they are thinking. From my point of view, it is our fortune that the patriarch has made such a choice. The Tianxian land is vast and boundless. Not to mention that we are only a feudal lord family in a middle-level subordinate country. Even in those big empires, there have been countless ups and downs. Many times, the rise and fall of the world started from a small matter. The wind and clouds change, and the sea flows. Only in the general trend we can keep a clear head and not get confused by some imaginary things. Only then can we survive. Judging the situation and sizing up the situation, this should be the only rule for the family to survive. The position of the head guardian in the family was extremely superior. Faintly, it even seemed to be above the 2 grand elders. Thus, when he said these words, he did not take advantage of his seniority. However, one of the grand elders could not help but say, "Head guardian, you mean that son of the Qin family is an unstoppable force in the general trend?" The head guardian nodded leisurely. "Patriarch should know better than you and I." Shimenyu waved his hand. "Don't argue, that son of the Qin family. Although it's not that the Shimen feudal lords cannot afford to offend him, it's best not to offend him. Since we are not enemies, then we must try our best to form an alliance." Form an alliance? With his background as a wealthy class offspring. That grand elder could not understand. Family status is probably the illusory thing that the great guardian was talking about. Elder June, perhaps you don't know, but that son of the Qin family should have already formed a spiritual bond. As soon as he said these words, the entire place fell into silence. Instantly, that Elder June's belly full of complaints and confusion disappeared. Formed a spiritual bond. To these old guys, they knew too well what it meant. Shimenyu stood up. 4 generations, the Shimen feudal lords must not become enemies with the Eastwood Qin family. This point must be written into the family's ancestral teachings and passed down for generations. Recommended the latest work of the urban Guru Lang, The Rebirth of the Official Path of Business. Guru Lang's previous work, The Color of Wealth. He believed that many urban readers would have an impression of it. Book ID equals 1746336. Book name equals The Rebirth of the Official Path of Business. Welcome to the Chidian Chinese website. The newest, fastest, and hottest works are all original works at Chidian. Chapter 83. Today's first update. The exciting content is here. Brothers, please don't be stingy with your tickets. Haha, shoot at me. I believe that the following plot will not disappoint most of you. The banquet of the Shimen feudal lords had opened the eyes of these martial arts students. They had truly experienced what it meant to be a feudal lord and an upper-class aristocrat. Although many of these martial arts students had come from the venerable families, the difference between a venerable family and a feudal lord family was obvious. While these martial arts students were envious, they also secretly made up their mind. They must perform well in this martial arts student exam and strive to make their family reach the same status as the Shimen feudal lords. On the way back, De Shiyang remained silent and seemed to have a lot on his mind. The trip to the Shimen feudal lords had made him realize the fatal difference between a venerable family and a feudal lord family. Aside from the patriarch of the Shimen clan, there were actually 4 8th-level true martial realm elders and protectors of the Shimen clan, and nearly 10 7th-level true martial realm elders. For your information, his venerable De Shi family only had 1 stage 7 genuine force warrior. And among the younger generation, besides the direct descendants of Patriarch Shimenyu, there were also many exceptional talents. Any one of them would most likely be a dragon among men in River County. Indeed, such difference could easily make one feel powerless. I must perform perfectly in the martial arts student exam. De Shiyang secretly made up his mind and thought, if I can get the spiritual affinity, the future of my family will rise. His future will be limitless. On the other hand, Yun Qinyan was muddle-headed. In her opinion, as the #1 family in South Cloud State, the Shimen feudal lords should be prosperous and luxurious. They should have a lot of talents. She also did not think that her wealthy family could be compared to the Shimen feudal lord. Thus, she was the most relaxed. Without a care in the world, she talked loudly. Qin Wushuang, I think that Simon Xing is trying to build a good relationship with you. Although Yun Qinyan was insensitive, girls were naturally sensitive. Her intuition could be said to be abnormal. Is that so? Qin Wushuang certainly felt the intention of making friends with Simon Xing, and naturally understood that this was certainly something that Shimen Yu had told him in advance. Qin Wushuang was not the kind of person who was blindly aloof. On the contrary, he was very good at judging the situation. Being friends with the Shimen feudal lords was much better than being enemies with them. Therefore, he wasn't enthusiastic about the olive branch that Simon Xing threw at him, but he didn't reject it either. He went with the flow, giving off a feeling that he didn't leave any traces behind. Of course, both sides were well aware of this. If outsiders such as Yun Qinyan asked, he naturally wouldn't explain anything. Yun Qinyan was very enthusiastic and insisted, there's absolutely no mistake. I've observed it repeatedly. Haha, Miss Yun is observing Simon Xing so carefully. Could it be that you have the ambition to marry into one of the great clans? Tisk, don't think of people as so vulgar. Yun Qinyan scoffed, then added seriously, so what if he's a descendant of a great clan? If I don't like it, I will not marry. While they were talking, they had already returned to the inn. That night, everyone went to bed early. It was because they would depart for the Redwood Royal City the next day. That was an even bigger stage. Most of the martial arts students had never been to the Redwood Royal City. Inwardly, they were full of expectations. Although Qin Wushuang had never been there, he had an open mind. Having lived 2 lives, of course, his mentality was different than those young people. To him, the Redwood Royal City was just a scenery that had yet to appear. It was just like in his former world, from the county to the city, then from the city to the provincial capital, and from the provincial capital to the capital. The principle was the same. In the morning, before Qin Wushuang had even opened his eyes, he heard Yun Qinyan calling from the corridor. You 2 sluggards still haven't woken up? Get ready to go. They got up and washed up. They gathered at the central square and counted the heads. In total, there were 86 participating martial arts students. After they had gathered, they left in a group. The group left South Cloud City in a grandiose manner. Along the way, Simon Xing had become the leader of the group. However, while he was acting as the leader, he would also ask for Qin Wushuang's opinion in a friendly manner from time to time. Naturally, the martial arts students from South Cloud City followed Simon Xing's lead. And the martial arts students from the outer counties felt the charisma of the patriarch after they had been invited by the Shimen feudal lords. They did not dislike Simon Xing's role as the leader. Those martial arts students from the city had received a serious warning from Simon Xing. During the trip, no one was allowed to cause trouble or cause a split. This trip represented the image of the South Cloud State. Whoever tried to undermine him would be smearing the reputation of the state. Once this hat was brought out, no one dared to act rashly. And the other 2 appropriate age martial arts students from the Shimen feudal lords had also received a serious warning from the patriarch to assist Simon Xing to control the situation. While the group was traveling, they also worked hard to adjust the atmosphere to avoid disputes between the city and the outer county martial arts students. It had played a good role as a lubricant. Since the offspring of the Shimen feudal lords had set an example, those martial arts students from the city also followed suit. Along the way, the atmosphere was quite good. Not only did no conflicts erupt, the gap between the two groups of martial arts students had gradually disappeared. They could even talk and laugh with each other. After all, they were all teenagers. After a while, they had become familiar with each other. Since they had become familiar with each other, naturally, there would be fewer misunderstandings and conflict. In less than a day, they had arrived outside the Redwood Royal City. Outside the Redwood Royal City, many villages and strongholds had been built. Each village was distributed in an orderly manner. From the overall situation, it had served as a buffer zone. Apparently, these strongholds had set up a strict defense. Interlocking with each other, they surrounded and protected the Redwood Royal City. All the martial arts students had successfully passed through the inspection. When they arrived at the main road leading to the Redwood Royal City, although they were a dozen miles away, they could clearly see the majestic Redwood Royal City sitting in the distance. The imposing manner was majestic and awe-inspiring. When Qin Wushuang saw the Redwood Royal City for the first time, these 8 words immediately emerged in his mind. South Cloud State was located to the south of the Redwood Royal City. Thus, this group of martial arts students from South Cloud State had prepared to enter from the South Gate. As they gradually approached, they arrived at the South Gate in a moment. The guards at the city gate had set up layers of checkpoints to verify the documents sent by the South Cloud State. Then, they checked each person's identity. After everything had ended, the captain of the guards said, "When you enter the city gate, you must control your mounts. Do not run around recklessly. Or else, if you get caught by the city guards, regardless of who you are, you will suffer." Simon Xing laughed. "I understand, these are the basic manners of aristocrats." "Yes, go in. Inside, there are bulletin boards everywhere. You guys should pay more attention. All the information about the martial arts student exam will appear on the bulletin board." After they had entered the city, the martial arts students had obviously restrained themselves. Even those outgoing martial arts students who loved to joke around had also become much less talkative. This was the Redwood Royal City. In the entire Bayou country, besides the imperial capital, there were 4 royal cities. A big city of this level made these martial arts students, who had not seen much of the world, feel somewhat restrained. Simon Xing had come to the Redwood Royal City a few times and was much better than the other martial arts students. He smiled. "Everyone, don't be too restrained. As long as you follow the rules, it's okay to talk and laugh. Everyone, pay attention to the bulletin boards everywhere. The information about the martial arts student exam." Before he had finished speaking, he saw a large group of people crowded in front of a bulletin board on the far side of the street. It was extremely lively. "It must be the information about the martial arts student exam. Let's go and take a look." Simon Xing gave a glance to 2 disciples from the same clan. These 3 understood tacitly and squeezed towards the crowd. As soon as they squeezed, the people in front of them became unhappy. They all looked back angrily and saw 3 luxuriously dressed martial arts students from the feudal lords had squeezed in. The curses that were about to come out of their mouths were forcefully swallowed back down. They swallowed their anger and moved to the side. They had no choice, they could not afford to offend the disciples of the feudal lords. However, Qin Wushuang did not want to squeeze in. When Simon Xing finished reading, he would certainly share the information when he came out. Speaking of which, with a disciple of the feudal lords leading the way, it seemed to work well no matter where they went. In a moment, among the complaints from the crowd, Simon Xing squeezed out with an excited face. From his expression, one could see the shock he felt after reading the bulletin board. So monstrous. Now everyone is more motivated, Simon Xing said with a somewhat excited tone. What's wrong? Young Master Xing, don't keep us in suspense. Haha, Wushuang, why don't you go in and take a look? Simon Xing asked with a smile. I will wait for you to share after you finish reading. Capable people do more work. If I squeeze in, it would be strange if those people didn't scold me to death. Qin Wushuang smiled bitterly. Simon Xing laughed and did not mind. When he saw everyone looking at him expectantly and waiting for him to speak, he felt a sense of accomplishment. He did not keep them in suspense and said, "The Emperor has issued an imperial order. In the 4 royal territories of the Bayou country, whoever wins first place will receive a reward. All the families of the participating martial arts students will be granted 1,000 mu of land. Those in the top 10 with the highest contribution will be granted 3,000 mu of land. Those in the top 3 will be granted 5,000 mu of land plus 10,000 gold." Haha. This haha meant that he had something else to say. "Then what about the number 1 with the highest contribution?" a smart martial arts student immediately asked. "Yes, the number 1 will not receive any special rewards, right?" Voices of agreement rose from all around. Simon Xing smiled mysteriously. "The number 1 with the highest contribution will be granted 10,000 mu of land, 30,000 gold, and their family will be unconditionally upgraded by 1 level. They will be granted the title of Marquis Champion." As soon as he said these words, instantly, waves of exclamations emerged. All the martial arts students were stunned. Indeed, these rewards were generous. The land and gold were not a big deal. Unconditionally upgrading their family by 1 level made those venerable children even more excited. Including De Shiyang, he started to calculate inwardly. If I can get the number 1 ranking with an increase of 1 level, wouldn't my family become a feudal lord? Besides, being granted the title of Marquis at a young age was a once-in-100 years opportunity in the Bayou country. Simon Xing seemed to enjoy everyone's intense reaction as he said leisurely, "Pay attention, this is only a group reward. It is built on the basis of the competition between the 4 royal territories. In this martial arts student exam, there will also be rewards for individual performance." Even for individuals? The martial arts students were all excited. Individual rewards are even more generous than the group rewards. Simon Xing's emotions had also been ignited as he raised his arm and said, "Regardless of background, regardless of your rank, if you can win the number 1 individual title in this martial arts student exam, your family will not be granted any responsibility. And you will enjoy the treatment of a king with a different surname. All rewards will be double the amount of the team's number 1 contribution." Bestowed king? Instantly, the blood of the martial arts students boiled. Although it would only be a king with a different surname, compared to the 4 royal territories, it would only be 1/3 of their land. However, after all, a king was a king. In the history of the Bayou country, it was rare for a king with a different surname to appear once in a few 100 years. And in this martial arts student exam, the reward of being bestowed king had appeared. This reward was enough to make all the participating martial arts students go crazy. Even Qin Wushuang could not help but exclaim at the generosity of the royal family this time. Qidian website welcomes all readers to come and read. The newest, fastest, and hottest serial works are all at Qidian. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.